All right, we're going to open the Monday, April 12th Board of Selectmen meeting at 5:31. We stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. All right, we don't have any public comment. Jason, do you want to read the warrants, please?
Make a motion to approve payroll warrant in the amount of $160,095.09.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
Are we in a deficit on the finance department in this warrant?
Oh, I'm sorry?
Is this warrant causing any deficit in I know the fire department's already in a deficit, right? Call fire wages are
No,
negative?
fire department is not in a deficit
It
yet.
was
One
negative
line-
on the
One
various.
line in the budget is, but not the
Yes,
budget.
but the salary is deficit.
Yes.
So I'm asking in the finance department, I know they're treating it like one line item. Are we in a deficit or not?
I don't think we are yet, because I don't think we've gotten bills yet from the contractor and started to pay them.
So we have gotten no bills from the
I
contractor?
don't think as of last week, we hadn't. And I would probably know, because as soon as they come in, they'd give them to me.
Yeah?
And I don't know why she hasn't billed us yet, but the longer she takes to bill us, the better it is, as far as I'm concerned right now. So
No, I'd like to know how much it's costing. So
$2,500 a week.
I thought it was up to that, so it's a
It
flat?
is up to that amount, and how many hours she actually spends is a matter of what's in the bill.
So she started at the end of January? When did she start?
I don't know. I mean, I can
Don't
go
know.
check that. I'm not prepared for these questions. If you'd like me to go check, I'll go check.
Yeah, I'd like to know how long this person's been on board and why we haven't gotten any
I
bills yet.
think it was February that it started.
Was it
First full
February?
week, but I
I
don't,
think it was sometime in February,
I'd
yes.
just like to know, because if we haven't gotten any bills, that's, I think, very unusual.
all right. Yeah, we can get that information sometime.
Individual lines can run over. The department budget can't, but individual lines can run over. So I am hoping she doesn't bill us till after May 1st, because the budget will not run over until she bills us, and then it will, once I pay it.
Okay, but we vote a line item budget at town meeting, and according to the person I spoke to at Department of Revenue, we aren't supposed to overspend the line items. That's why we vote line items.
Well, if somebody from the Department of Revenue gives me that in writing, that would be fine, but,
I'll get it for you.
well, with all due respect, as finance director, I think I should be talking to the Department of Revenue about a question like that, and I will call them and talk to Sue Worley, our rep. But my understanding for many, many years is that individual lines can be exceeded. Now, understand the implications if you're right. That means the fire department is out of business. That means no more 911 calls. So let's hope we're wrong. You're
Well,
wrong.
I guess I would
Because
ask that we do a reserve fund transfer, which we could have done already.
You cannot do a transfer under Chapter 4431A until May 1st.
A reserve fund transfer we could do.
I'm sorry?
Reserve fund, the reserve fund.
Oh, the reserve fund can be used to transfer, but
Yes, we could have done that, yes. So we don't have a deficit. I think that'd be a good
if we
idea.
identify from Department of Revenue that they say indeed we are bound by a single line, because I notice on your warrant from past years that you transfer from
Correct.
places into other places, and I'm
Yes.
presuming that like many other communities, individual lines run over, and you're not bound by those. But if the Department of Revenue tells me that you are indeed bound line by line, then yes, we'll have to ask the Finance Committee, Finance Board for line item transfers. But with the balance that they've got, honestly, I don't know if they have the kind of capacity to fund the sort of overruns that are happening in fire and finance department. Don't know. That all has to be carefully analyzed. I can't answer you off the top of my head.
Right, and my concern is, I realize that towards the end of the year, and we're delaying our town meeting, that we run into these predicaments, and we have in the past transferred within departments, but this is the first year that we have intentionally procured a contract that we know exceeds the appropriation, and that's where my concern lies, that I don't know that that's the kind of decision-making we're supposed to be doing. So anything you can give me about when this person started and why we don't have any bills
Well,
would be
that's not the
appreciated.
only department that we know we're going over. You approved an increase for the building inspector with the full knowledge it was gonna push the budget over. You have a memo from that back in November carefully explaining that,
Yes,
sir.
and the
You
mon-
passed, you appropriated, you approved it anyways.
Nope, the amount of money for that extra money was to come from the finance director's salary because he was taking on responsibilities formerly done by our financial director.
That's not correct. I suggest you go
Well-
back and look at that memo, but look,
Okay, I'm not going to argue this
if,
anymore. I
if
just
we're
moved
going to
on.
have this conversation, Mr. Chairman, I would like to get the documents and be able to have the conversation on the basis of actual fact, not our memories and supposition, because
Let's get the
if
information for
if-
the next
if
meeting.
the board is having any sort of
Get the
important
information.
conversation about this, then I think you need the factual information. I'll be happy to get it.
All right, if you can disseminate that later this week or for the next meeting, that'll be helpful, so
Sure.
we can get that cleaned up. Any other comments for payroll warrant 2141? All in favor?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve bill warrant 2141 in the amount of $165,046.67, which breaks down to the town, $80,785.47, water and sewer, $30,399.90, payroll withholding, $5,062.88, light bills, $30,391.03. Grants and revolving, $18,407.39.
Second, any further discussion?
Yes.
Sure.
This is all we got is the five items. And I don't have a calculator with me, but if you just add up the last figures, the 47 cents, 90 cents, 88, 03, and 39, it's gonna come up to 67.
Let's see.
Well, let's take out the numbers. 80,000, 785.
Yeah, yes, it does. Yes, it does. I'm sorry.
On first glance
Yep.
to me, it looks like it does, but
Yep.
let's double check.
Yep, I just did it a second time. It computes.
30,391. 62.
I match.
All right. 407.
Yep.
Yeah, that comes out. Okay. Any other comments on that? All in favor?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Jason. Let's try and get some easy things out of the way first. So I had on here field approval process. Last year, there was some input from different boards on field use. I think just going forward, this board can take on the approval for any field use going forward.
Okay.
You know, whether it's the Pines or the Shanahan Field or Washington Park, whatever it is.
Do you want me to bring every application to you? Or just approve the field use in general?
I think you want to coordinate that with Bill. He's going to take lead on that. And then you don't have to come to the whole board. He's the liaison for that, so he can work with you on that. But I don't think we have to have much of discussion on that now. We can just take over that, and at least people in town can know exactly who to go to for a response. The other thing we can get to quickly is we have Jim and Matt on Zoom.
Oh, yeah.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yep, I hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
So we had we had an email from a resident looking for information on the summer program, and I know that we had stated at one of the previous meetings that we had an early May go, no-go kind of situation where we're trying to see what the CDC and the state guidelines were going to look like in early May before we made a final decision. But there was some questions around what the process was last year, I guess, regarding some kind of voucher or discount for certain people. And I know that there was at least one resident looking for an update on that kind of situation. So Jim Day had presented that information to me. That woman then did connect with myself and Ms. Castronellis looking for an update, and her kind of situation from last year as it relates to going forward to this year. So Matt, I'm not sure if you have any kind of knowledge on what happened last year with certain people and discounts and vouchers and how that's going to look going forward.
Yeah, so each year for the past, I would say 3 years, we have offered scholarships for certain families that qualify. So anyone who feels like they may qualify for either a reduced payment or a free tuition generally emails me at the summer program, and then I email them the scholarship information. So the person who you're referring to did reach out to me and did receive the scholarship information for this year. So it's a sheet of paper that they fill out, then they need to show their income, and then we make a decision based on how many funds are available in the summer program account, and then we award specific families, again, either reduced tuition or free tuition.
Okay, so that information went out to her, I'm guessing, in the last several days?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep, that information has gone out to her and a couple other families who've also inquired.
okay. I think the concern was that the basis of this qualification affects their ability to either work or not work this summer. So that's kind of why there was, there was kind of a need to get some information back. But that's all I wanted to make sure that that got disseminated to those people. Jim, did you want to add anything? I think, thank you for bringing that to light, and thank you for letting her, or having her contact myself and Ms. Castronellis. But is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I just wanted to make sure that those families got to the right person. I know Matt has an email on that website, and I think I was just trying to make sure that that was the email that got to Matt, or if there wasn't a phone number or something else to help those families make sure they got in touch with Matt. So if Matt got in touch with them, then all is good, and those families are taken care of, so that's great.
Yeah, I know things are a bit difficult, especially the last year with communications and trying to get everybody organized. So I'm not attacking anybody. I just want to make sure the information gets to the right people at the appropriate time. So that's it. Thank you guys for joining. Thanks for clearing that up, and thank you for your efforts. And we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks as far as moving forward with the summer program.
All right, and just as an update for you guys, so far we have 60 campers registered for this summer and 13 CITs, just as an update.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, so let's jump up to request of employees to roll over more than 10 days of vacation time for fiscal year 21 due to inability of use during COVID. Anybody have any comments on that? Bill?
Yeah, just wondering who these folks might be, and was this at our request because we deem them so essential that, or because other people were out with COVID or caring for other COVID family members, that we kind of imposed this on them and said, listen, we really can't have you, take vacation now, do us a favor and not. Is that the situation?
Yeah, no, Bill, it's not, it's not that particularly. It's just that people have nowhere to go, literally. And so they haven't been using vacation because of COVID. So I guess you did this last year, from what I'm told. You voted to allow people to roll over more than the 10 days in the bylaw, in recognition of the fact that people aren't using days because they don't have anywhere to go.
So if they rolled over 10 from last year and they're going to roll over 10 more from this year, is it 20 cumulative, or is it just another 10?
The bylaw allows them to roll over 10 days
Right.
of whatever they get. So let's say they get 3 weeks. They have to use one and they can roll over 10 days.
Right.
So The request is to allow people who get more than 10 days to roll those over to the extent they didn't use them. Some people did take vacations and and did use them, others didn't.
Right.
So the reason this request is coming now is because we're in April, and if the board says no, then people are going to use vacation between now and June 30th. They obviously don't want to be deprived of it. So we want to get them an answer one way or the other.
And we also don't want everybody taking vacation at the same time, because that
That's
impacts.
a potential implication of some of
Capability
this, because if the board does not approve this, then you're going to have folks starting to take time off in May and June, more than likely, when the weather gets a little better, and do staycations, I guess we
I have
call
a
them.
vague memory of doing this last year.
Right, that's what I wanted to see, I know, we should have looked this up before tonight, but I'd like to see what we voted, because I thought in our vote, we might have said something about what happens to those days. Do you know what I mean? I know we did a vote, I know we made a motion on it, I know it was specific, because everything was closed. You know, March, everything shut down, I remember that.
If Catherine, do you
Yeah.
know roughly when you voted it? Because it would be a lot to try to look.
Yes, it should be in
It would probably be
between
April.
March
April?
13th and April, yeah, I think so.
All right, so if you go on to something else, Mr. Chairman, Catherine can go see if she can find that vote in the minutes, and then,
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
can read it
because,
to
That's
you.
good, thank you.
okay.
I remember that we voted on something, and I don't recall if there was stipulations around usage.
Well, yeah, I just think we asked, like, what happens? You know, we voted that they could carry it over because everything was shut down.
Right,
And so I would say March and April was when we did that.
yeah, okay.
I would have thought last year you would have had less of the problem because COVID started in basically March. And so 8 months into the year, I would guess most people would have used some or all of their vacation. So it was only a 4-month problem last year. This year, it's an entire year problem because
Correct.
basically hardly
Correct.
anybody's taking vacations. So I do think there's some merit to this. In
Yeah.
allowing people to, to roll more days over than the normal 10. But up to you folks.
Yeah. I don't know. If you can, just let me know when you have some info, Catherine. All right, we can go on to, I'm not sure what this means, job postings going forward. Catherine, do you remember what job postings going forward was in relation to?
Maybe the treasurer collector's posting?
Was it the town administrator or town manager anticipation job posting and the treasurer job posting, maybe?
Right. I thought we were going to post the treasurer right now. That's what I thought we talked about.
I think we talked about posting that for next fiscal year.
I thought,
Posting it now in
Yes,
anticipation
that
of
copy.
hiring
Next fiscal year?
Hopefully.
next fiscal year,
Soon,
because
yeah.
we're already into May, May, June. 60 days isn't a lot to find the candidate,
right,
vet the candidate, and bring the candidate on board. So
Mhm.
I think the idea was put it in now, so that when the new budget season hits, we can hit that ground running.
Do we have that job posting
Nope.
available?
Nope, but I can take the one, my overall priority this past week's been budget and warrant, but that's finally drawing to an end. So I can probably take the advertisement for treasurer that we did back in February, dust it off, update it, and get it in the Beacon by the end of the week, no problem.
Okay. Go ahead.
and just say, I thought, when we discussed this, Kevin, I thought we said, I know where we're heading. I know where we're heading.
Yes,
I thought we discussed the posting has to say assistant, but then when we converse with them, we're gonna talk about the transition, right? Doesn't the posting have to say assistant? Because of our
board's vote
bylaw?
was to post the treasurer collector job, and there was no posting of the assistant job. You have somebody in it.
I think what you're referring to, Kathy, is the
Okay.
change from
I see
where
what
we
he's-
are
I see
now.
what he's saying, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. So, interesting. Should be an interesting posting.
Okay, anything else for job postings? Anybody? Ed?
No.
Any questions? Jason?
No.
Bill, you all set?
Interestingly enough, my notes say hire an assistant treasurer collector.
That's what I remember, but. Actually, let me look back. I might have
My
written-
notes from 3/28.
So when that job posting's available, could you send it to us?
Sure,
Just so we
of
can
course.
review it?
Yep.
All right, so let's move up.
Oh, wait a minute, Mike. You said review it. Do you want to review it before I post it?
Yes.
Because, well, here's the problem. I can't send the Board of Selectmen something to review and then take your comments back. That's a serial violation of the open meeting law. So either I send it to you and you want to review it, in which case it waits 2 weeks, or I post it,
I-
one or the other.
Or the Board of Selectmen can allow the chair and vice chair to review it. I can,
Fine with me if you want to review it,
Yeah.
just be
Yeah.
advised it's gonna wait 2 weeks.
why?
Even if you just send it to us too?
Because
two.
for you to, for me to send you something and you to send me back opinions on it as a board,
No, just if you send it to Bill and I to review and
oh,
scan
just the
through.
two of you?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine,
Okay.
sure.
Is that all right with you?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move up to items to be complete, Finance Director's priorities. Let's do that. I think you had sent us an email, Kevin, on
Yeah.
the
So
projects.
Hopefully, the warrant will be over this week. Well, it's gotta be over this week, because it's gotta go up on the wall. So, I thought it was, important to send the board a memo and tell you what I see as the priorities, for the immediate future, assuming some of my time is gonna free up once that warrant gets posted. I also had a bit of a concern that with at least one of these projects, it's not really in my lane. You have not assigned it to me. And so, rather than plunge ahead working on it, I wanted some guidance from you about, do you want me to work on it? So, writing motions for the ATM, that's kind of a no-brainer. That'll start next week. Finishing the finance plan for the annual town meeting. There's still a few small moving pieces that have to be finished, the health insurance budget, a few other things, so that kind of is a normal process. The variance report that you got, and this is what you were just talking about, Kathy, the variance report identifies a number of budgets that are tracking to run over or could be close, and I have to go back and look at it. So a plan has to be developed to fund those using the three options available to the town, the reserve fund transfer, chapter 44, 33A, or town meeting action. So that's a priority for the town accountant and I to develop that plan and have that back to you by the next meeting. Highway, water, sewer, and police negotiations. I've got to find time to start working on that because highway, water, sewer have issued a demand for bargaining, and basically, once they say, we demand bargaining, we've got to respond. So I've got to get on with that, and I expect the police are going to have a demand any day now. They popped in today to say hello and say, what's the status of that? So that's going to have to start very soon. Property casualty workers' comp compared, procurement project, so sorry for the typo there. So I've looked at the town's loss ratios for the last 10 years. I've looked at your coverages and also the property casualty, the property listing, the vehicle listing, the scheduled property listing, the special property listings, and basically those are all out of date. So at the current time, we're insuring vehicles that we don't own anymore. We're insuring buildings that, one at least, that doesn't exist. Those haven't been updated in a while, so these need to be updated. And then I have as I told you last week, I think, I have the proposal from Maya for the renewal. It's for $347,000, which is a heck of an increase in the current cost. Now, we budgeted that, but I think we can do better by either outright issuing an RFP or at least putting some pressure on Maya to basically say we're going to issue the RFP, and if they respond, maybe we can avoid issuing the RFP. We also need to update these schedules because they quoted them on the basis of inaccurate schedules. So if I accuratize those, that's going to translate into some money savings. So that's a pretty substantial project, but I dare say it's one that's got to get done one way or the other, because you can't be insuring based on inaccurate lists of vehicles and buildings and things like that. There's also a couple buildings on there, like, I think of an example, Little Red Schoolhouse. Now, if the Little Red Schoolhouse, which is on our property listing, were to burn down, and we recovered the value, you're not going to rebuild it, presumably. So the question comes, do you insure it for replacement value, or do you insure it strictly for contents, what's called contents, meaning the things inside of it? And I've had this happen in towns over the years many, many times, because towns will have historic buildings which, if they burned, would not be replaced, period. So you insure them for partial value, so if they have a fire and part of it gets burned, you can rebuild it. But past a certain point, it doesn't make sense. So that's determined by the value you insure the building for. So some of that needs to be looked at as well, and I'm in the process of reviewing it. So this is a substantial project, but it's one that's got to happen because you're spending more for property casualty than you need to be. Town report. I actually looked at the town report the other day. It's sitting on my desk, and I had sort of thought that it was just all the submissions that all the departments send in, but there's more in there that somebody has to do. And I don't quite know who does that, but I've got to look at it again and figure out who does all these things, because there's a bunch of material in there and it's not clear who does it. So like the town clerk's report clearly is the town clerk, and I've got that. The highway department report is the highway department, and I've got that. But there's a bunch of ancillary stuff, and I'm not sure who does them. So there's going to be some work there. The trash contract. Now this is the one that you did not assign to me. It is not, therefore, presumably my function. I have been doing it in so much as I gathered the prevailing wage numbers for the next 5 years from the Department of Labor in order to give it to the vendor who, in the contract you awarded 5 years ago, you have the option of awarding another 5 years and not having to bid it. So I did that, sent it to him. I did a preliminary analysis over the weekend, and it looks like a very, very substantial increase is what he has offered in his renewal, in his 5-year renewal. I want to massage those figures again the latter part of this week and come back to you probably at the next meeting and tell you if I think that's the best you can do, or if you should consider two options. One would be to bid it, go out and bid it, which is a substantial process, because that RFP is a huge document. The other option, frankly, is terminating the aggregated collection contract and privatizing it. And there's pros and cons to both approaches. So I want to take a look at that and get that back to you. Now, here's the dilemma for me, and I need some guidance from the board. Trash contracts are clearly the responsibility of the Board of Health. And I don't want to intrude on their turf. I don't want to get them angry because I'm doing things that neither they nor you want me to do. So I kind of need some guidance. Is this something you want me to doing, or you want me to be doing, or is this something that you want to turn over to them? The last time you did this was 6 years ago, and I don't know who did it 6 years ago. I can't find the bid spec in there. Maybe there's one, but I can't find it. So I don't know if the finance director did this. Board of Health does it under Chapter 111. It's their responsibility.
Have you talked to the Board of Health this year about that project?
I mentioned it to somebody in the Board of Health, and I didn't, basically said, are you doing this? And I didn't get a lot back, so I don't have a lot of clarity at this point.
Question?
Yeah, go ahead.
You're running through a long list of things, and I just want to make sure that it's clear that we're not just saying, yeah, sure, right now, okay? So, because I feel like we're at a critical point right now. I have not been able to see a revenue report yet this year. From you, I was told that the reconciliations hadn't been done since September. So when I think of the priorities right now, I think about get our finances on track, get our finances on track. Take care of the warrants so that we're ready for next year. Any of these other studies, I think that would be something that I would consider after the annual town meeting, not prior to it, simply because we hired you as an interim, and I think we were very, very upfront and honest about, we just want you to keep the lights on. I know you have a wealth of experience, a lot of background, but right now, we're looking at a deficit situation in our town with our spending, which is certainly going to impact our free cash, which is something that, in the past we've used not just to purchase things, but also to build our reserves. So I want to be very careful and cautious. And I'm listening to everything you say. I read everything you send me. And then I go and I do a little bit of my own fact checking just to make sure that I understand things as well as I like to. Because that's my nature, is to just really understand it. So my belief is that in the past, our financial director has always kind of led the charge on the trash contract. I know, Board of Health has the oversight, but I don't believe they've ever been the person to procure a trash contract, simply because we don't have a position in that department that would have that capability. So it was always our procurement person, who is our financial director. So it could have been Greg LeBrecq, or it would have been Denise Demkowski, one of the two, would have done that contract. And, my feeling about trash, it's a bad statement, but we all know that the cost is going up. Because of the issue with recycling, we no longer save money by recycling, is my understanding. We pay for it.
Right.
So.
More expensive to recycle.
Correct. But still we recycle, right? Because that's the right thing to do. So,
State law too.
right. Yeah, okay, thank you.
You make,
Another
you make,
good reason.
you
But,
make a very good point, and in point of fact, part of the reason
yeah,
that the proposal for a renewal contract is up so high is because they're no longer getting paid for recyclables, that they're paying to dispose of it,
yeah.
which is a big boost to the cost. And the other big factor is prevailing wages have gone up substantially. So the combination of those two factors has driven waste management's cost up, and they're just passing it through to us.
Right. So are we bound to engage in a 5-year contract, or are we allowed to do a lesser year?
You
Because,
can do, well, when it comes to an additional contract, it's a discussion between the two parties. Because they can say, we'll do a 5-year renewal, but we won't do a 1. Or they could say, we'll do a 3, but we won't do a 2.
Okay.
I don't know.
so,
So it's a negotiation. Their preference is to be given a 5, because then they know they've got, the right number of trucks, the right number of personnel and all that.
correct.
What I'm saying to you is, based on that preliminary look, I don't think we are capturing full advantage of the marketplace in terms of competition. Because in the world of municipal aggregated trash collection contracts, the first year you bid it, you usually get a good deal. And then when you take it out to renewal,
Thank you.
it's kind of at the point where the vendor doubts that you'll bid it, and they're betting you won't. And so you're not getting the best pricing guaranteed.
I understand all that theory. I guess what I'm looking at right now is just where we are, interim director, going back to 19 hours as of town meeting, and
Right.
keeping the critical tasks running. So I guess what I would look at is what we could get to extend it, say, 3 years, to give us a chance to get our town administrator in here, and then let that person kind of take on that whole thing. I don't
What's
want,
the expiration date for the trash?
it's this
June 30.
Yeah, we gotta do something. And I just feel like taking on another big endeavor on top of the big endeavors. we're
Would they
already-
entertain an extension? A 1-year
They,
extension?
they were not interested initially, and they indicated that a 5-year extension is what they were looking for. I don't know
With an
how they-
increased rate of,
Yeah, I don't know how they'd react if I mean, the information in terms of how much it went up, it's somewhere in the range of $80,000 to $100,000 increase over the current fiscal year, so it's big. It's something in the vicinity of 20 to 25%. So When I share that information, and I say to them, that's a pretty astronomical increase, I'm pretty sure the town is not gonna react well to that, and bidding is likely, maybe they'll say, okay, we'll do a one-year extension. I don't know. Your current contract allows you to do an extension of 1 to 5 years, so it's kind of a matter of will they do it?
I would ask for a 1 year at this
And if they
point.
would, that would give you time really to look at this, because I think there's some real question for you to look at as a community. Lots of towns have abandoned aggregated bidding, the one contractor for single contractor, because under the old tax law prior to 2 years ago, you could deduct, because you were paying for your trash collection through your tax rate, you got to deduct that. Today, with a standardized $25,000 deduction, that's no longer the case.
Right.
So the value that once drove everybody to do aggregated bidding, one of the two pillars to that is gone now. The other pillar to it was the supposition that if you aggregated everybody's business, you get better pricing. And what pretty much the collective municipal experience has been is that, yeah, you do the first time around, probably, because you bid it, and it's very competitive. But then when you come up on the 5-year renewal or the 3-year renewal, if you don't competitively procure it and you just take the renewal, you are definitely not getting the best pricing you can get. So it kind of says to you one of two things: either take a renewal, and 1-year renewal if they give it to you, and then consider either getting out of the business or bidding it, or bidding it right now.
I just don't know that there's enough time to bid it right now.
You have enough time to bid it.
Or you threaten to bid it.
I don't know, yeah, we can threaten to bid it. The question isn't so much, do we have time to do it? The question is, do I have time to do it?
Right.
Correct.
With all this in,
So I say, this is my opinion, there's 5 opinions up here. I
Yeah.
would say you threaten to bid it
try to get the 1-year renewal.
and say we would prefer a 1-year extension. If you don't want to give it to us, then we'll bid it.
Okay, well, I'll do that, that's what I'll pursue.
That's an easy kind of
Okay,
short
I'll
conversation.
pursue that. I'll also talk to the Board of Health, see what
Do we need to vote on
Deb and,
that?
Probably.
So-
yeah, the other Board of Health member have to say, in sort of general terms, if they've got any reflections on this at all from their own experience, and then report back at the next meeting. And at that next meeting, Board will definitely have to make some decisions, but I'll give you a memo that kind of lay out, are they willing, if they're willing to take a 1-year deal, I take the consensus is get the
Well,
1-year
we'll probably
deal.
vote on it, so I think you want to make a motion.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure the Board of Health does not want to take on, try to bid out this contract. They really don't have the personnel for that.
Sure.
I've spoken with Deb Hall several times about it.
Yep.
So I'll make a motion that we request a 1-year extension on the contract. Do I have to say something? Otherwise, we'll go out to bid, or what? Otherwise, we will entertain going out to bid.
For a second.
So that you will be aware before you vote. That's fine.
Okay.
Just be aware that a 1-year extension means a virtual guarantee of this pricing, because they will not give you any reduction in this pricing when they know a year from now you're probably going to bid.
Well,
So
except they,
that means we are
Right.
buying an $80,000 to $100,000 increase in the cost of that budget.
or they might look at it and say,
We don't wanna lose
we'll
it.
do well, we don't want to lose them, so maybe they'll meet us halfway
Right.
and give us
They
something. I mean, I don't know, I'm not a trash
All right,
person.
so there's a motion. Is there a second? Anybody?
I'll second it.
Second. All right. Any further discussion? Yeah.
Yeah. This is just killing me, only because,
Trash.
yeah, I know we talked about this last week, so it's really fresh in my mind. And we planned for a 5% increase, and I worried at that time last week, said it wasn't enough, and you assured me that it's not gonna be that much, we're gonna be okay, and now you're talking 20%. It
But
just-
Bill, respectfully, I don't think I said that about trash. I said that about property casualty, but I don't think I said that about trash, because I had his proposal, and I already knew last week it was not 5 or 10%. Now, exactly what it was, I didn't know, because the component that I had to take some time, and I had to talk to him, was the recyclables. And what I have now verified in the past few days is that it's as I feared, which is they have to pay to dispose of the recyclables because there's no market right now.
Right.
And so that piece of the puzzle has driven the cost up dramatically.
Yeah,
I think what happened a couple-
I've known that for years, to tell you the truth. And quite honestly, we went over every stinking line in this budget. So trash was specifically addressed as one of the line items. And we left it in there as 5%. And if you knew last week that it was gonna be more, significantly more than 5%, why did you not bring it up then so that we could have an even better idea of where this is gonna end up at the end of the day? You know,
Bill, I think you need to watch the broadcast because I very clearly said, in a point of fact, highlighted as one of the still moving budget items, trash collection. I said, trash collection, health insurance, property casualty. Same thing I've been saying for weeks now, because health insurance has never been spreadsheeted, and it's gonna run over 10,000 this year. I reported that.
yeah,
And I gotta do it.
I'm gonna go watch it, because I know that I was worried about that 5% would not be nearly enough, knowing what I know about the recycle business and how the cost have just skyrocketed, mainly due to China will not take this stuff anymore, and now there's no market for it. You literally have to pay to get rid of it.
Right.
And the cost to get rid of it, you can't stick it in landfills, it's astronomical, so I had a feeling this is gonna get.
Yeah.
I would like, also if I can get a copy of the current contract ASAP, I'd like to read through it, please.
Yeah, on the line item, I have crossed out contract expense and then total rubbish collection budget. Like it,
I have 587, 795.
Yeah, me too, with it, which was a 5% increase over last year, and my worry and my fear all along was 5% would not even come close to what.
So should we replace this number now in our omnibus? Should we bump this up?
I
gonna
think it's almost
post this.
inevitable, no
Well,
matter who you go with.
Before
Charges are through the roof, I don't think you're gonna say, well,
before you bump it up, there's,
we bid this out 5 years ago,
yeah,
because,
Didn't
exactly.
they go out of business? Our vendor went out of business.
Our business, yeah, he went out of
And
business,
we bid in a hurry.
right. But Waste Management was far and away the lowest bid.
By far.
I mean, by a lot.
Yes.
And we bid it all, we bid everybody. We even bid the guy down the street
Yeah.
in our own hometown.
Mhm.
And there was nobody close. You know, then, so I'm not sure what we'll do. I'm not sure how much better you'll get, only because they're all in the same situation.
Well, I just,
Recycle is killing them.
yeah, this is going back a couple of years under recycle.
Absolutely. I think I clipped an article and sent it to all the board members just as a, hey, you know, this is coming.
Yeah.
And this is gonna cost, and we ought to start figuring out a way to, how do we mitigate these costs or somehow, you know, find an alternate solutions. It's only gonna get worse.
so should we replace this number that's in the warrant? If we know it's a fake number, at least put in something that's realistic, because if we have to amend it a little bit at town meeting, that's fine, but I'd rather not be so far out of the ballpark that we look like we don't know what we're doing. You know, I'd rather be at like 700,000. If it's 25%, that's 699, 756.
What does that do to that surplus? That cuts it down to
There's
half,
no-
right?
Stop saying the word. You know
Well,
there's no.
From what
surplus.
happened last week, we're at like 250, then we voted to put money towards the Council on Aging van,
Oh, yeah, we did.
minus the grant that might come in for that. And
Yeah.
now if we up that line item,
If I up to 20%, you're looking at
You want 20 or 20?
2040, 2430,082 for a new bottom line number, and a surplus of 168,063. You take out the 60, you're back almost where we started, about 99.
So are we changing this number? This is just.
well,
a-
wait, we're voting on,
What? Oh, the motion, thank you.
we're voting on the motion,
Sorry.
and then we'll have to go back and then look at what we
Okay.
want to do with this line item. So, Ed, any questions on the motion?
No.
Jason, any questions on the motion?
No.
All right, so all in favor of, see if I can recall what the motion
I made a
was.
motion to extend for 1 year.
Offer an
as-
extension for 1 year, if not, then bid out.
Yeah, or otherwise we might have to bid out.
Okay, all in favor of that motion? Aye?
All right.
Yes.
All right. Now, we want to go back and then look at this line item number
Yeah,
to increase it to the 20%, you think?
20%?
So we're not falling short at town meeting of that line item and any surprises that may come between now and then?
So let's round it to something.
I'd say at least 20, unless somebody wants to go higher if they feel more comfortable.
So if we round that, instead of the 590 whatever, to 700?
So 671 to 700,000?
Yeah. That's 25%. And then if.
That's what you said, Kevin, that it was a 20 to 25% possible increase?
Yeah, I was in that range.
Yeah, and then if we amend down.
It was about, it was
people will be
roughly
happy.
an $80,000 increase, but that was a very quick analysis of the recyclable tonnage times their numbers.
Yeah,
And I need time to go through that a little bit more finely, because it's, you know, the budget's got to be done on a realistic assessment. The problem, of course, is, as soon as I get that done, I mean, one of the problems driving it, there's two problems driving the number. One is prevailing wages up substantially in Massachusetts. That's from the Department of Labor. Nobody controls that. And number two, recyclable tonnage is up dramatically, and that's because people are home. Nobody's going out, so people are generating a lot more trash than used to be the case in prior years. Now, as I look at that, what do we think is going to happen from July 1, 2021 to June 30, 22? You know, so do I believe the current tonnages are going to continue, or do we think the world is going to change back to where it was pre-COVID, and those tonnages are going to drop because people aren't going to be home as much generating trash? That's a tough.
well, I would think it's probably not going to increase all that much differently than the previous year.
So right now, the analysis I did assumes that the tonnage will continue at the level that it was at this year,
Right.
with some very modest increase for growth of the town, because it tends to always go up, it never tends to go down. So at that on that basis, that budget is up about 80,000. But remember, this is an estimate, because you pay a bill to them based on actual tonnage. And so we get it as close as we can, and then hope for the best.
So, do we want to get a motion so we can have a discussion on increasing that budget line item?
I'll make a motion to increase it to 670,000.
675?
No, it is 670, there's lots of zeros.
What's that?
670,000.
What's that a percentage of increase?
I just, he said 80,000, so I rounded it to 590 and added 80. Is that right?
Yeah.
You're going to go to 700 even.
Well, if you want to, I was just trying to ballpark it somewhere.
Well, I think we'd want to ballpark higher.
Okay, then we can go to I'll revise 700,000 for trash, recycling and trash pickup.
It is. Can
I'm going
I get a
once.
second on that? All right, so we have a motion and a second.
Yeah.
Ed, any comments on that?
I'm just wondering if the company will take a look and see what we budgeted for, and then base their increase on how we budgeted this. And a question for Kevin is, you mentioned all these different items that have gone up. Do you have any figures on the tipping fees? Have they gone up?
On the what, I'm sorry?
The tipping fees?
I do. I don't have it here with me.
Okay.
But yes, the tipping fee did go up.
Okay.
But again, the tipping fee increase did not account for the majority of this increase. It came from the increased labor cost because of the prevailing wage law, the hourly rate for the personnel on truck, and the recyclables, which it was not completely value neutral, but for every ton of recyclable, some revenue came back to waste management, which offset the cost. And the way your contract is written, we get credit for that, but it's a floating number because it depends on the market. So you don't get the same, you can't predict the credit because it's based on the market.
Sure.
So the assumptions we've made are that it's going to continue. You're not going to get any credit on it. Now, if the middle of the year, that changes, and there's a market again for recyclables, then you won't need as much. But we've kind of got to make a worst-case scenario guess on this, because what you don't want to do is you do, if you can, is you don't want to run out of money in the middle of the year or 3/4 into the year. So you kind of make a worst-case scenario budget for that, and then if you end up having surplus, you have surplus. So right now, the assumptions I've made are kind of worst-case scenario.
How close are the costs for a ton of trash and a ton of the recyclables? How close?
Again, I'd have to go get the contract proposal that he sent in. I don't have it in front of me, and I apologize, but I might have a note. Give me one second.
That wouldn't, obviously, that wouldn't include the money that's received from, what little money there is received from the recyclable.
Yeah, in order to know that, I would have to get them to give me probably either a monthly or a biweekly run showing, here's how much we paid, how much tonnage we generated for both for bulk and for recyclables, how much we got for a credit, if any, based on them selling it in the market, and then what was our net cost. And I don't have that right now, but we could ask them that. I don't think it's gonna, to be honest with you, I don't think it's gonna make a big impact on the price, because I think the assumption realistically has to be that there isn't any marketplace for recyclables right now, nor is there going to be in the near future.
And hasn't been for, basically for a couple of years now.
Hasn't been a lot. I mean, you know, there's certain, at any given moment, there might be a market for cardboard. And then the next month, there might be a market for PE2. In the next market, I mean, you know, it fluctuates. So it's kind of hard to know what markets will develop. And then it's a matter of, if there's a market for the stuff, how much tonnage are we generating, and what's the offset to the bill? Because we basically split. They get half, we get half of the recyclable savings. It's a pretty, I mean, at the end of the day, it is a very complicated calculation, and I want time to review it and make sure I've done the best job I can to estimate this for you. And then have the conversation with them, what about a 1-year renewal, to give us time to decide what we want to do. So.
What about this single stream recycling? Is that?
It's basically, what that
Would we be
means is.
better off going back to what we had before?
Yeah, so the MRFs, the multiple resource facilities, I think the last one around was Haverhill. They used to dump everything on the tipping floor, and then machines would put it on conveyor belts and spill off different things. So plastic would go off one place, metal would go off one place, ferrous metal would go off one place, and then there'd be markets for that stuff that'd sell it. Today, single source means you pick everything up, and if there's a market, they'll separate it. But right now there isn't, so it's all going in one place, all in a big incinerator.
Okay, thank you.
All set?
You still do recycling, by the way, because at any moment, there might be a market for recycling. So in my town, we put out a trash barrel, we put out a recycling barrel. And even though right now, all that recyclable is going right in the incinerator along with the trash, at any given time, they may be able to pull something out of the stream. That's how it's been explained to me.
All set, Ed?
Yes.
Jason, anything?
All set.
So,
Just,
Kathy, you can mention this.
yeah, okay, so I know West Newbury is also looking at their trash contract, because their finance member asked me about it at work. We work in the same building. So, and they were coming in pretty high for a small town like them, and they were asking about whether our trash uses the arm thing or whether they pick it up. And I said, no, you don't need the special can. So they were actually interested in knowing more about who we're using. I didn't know if it would create a better market if we joined forces. And my other question just is, you know, we're such a disposable society now, you know, throw everything out. And I know there's some kind of a thing you can throw out an item and you pay for it, but I don't know who controls that. Is that our control, or is that the trash hauler?
You mean like the electronics and things like that?
No. There's a thing where if you want to put out a big item, you can pay something for them to
Bulk.
take.
Yeah,
bulk
but you do that
collection.
individually, like through waste management. You can say, I'm gonna put out a couch, it's $50, and you pay them $50.
Well, yeah, so this is what I'm wondering about is, like, how much of this are they actually doing and collecting, or how much of this are they just throwing in their truck and charging us the tonnage? And whether or not
Oh,
we can raise the fee
I
on
don't know that you'll
that.
ever find that
Well, no,
out.
raise the fee on that so that there's more savings to us. If they're having our trash hauler come back to take away their couch, well, if you try to haul it to Haverhill, you're gonna have to pay, I don't know how much, but you're
Yeah.
gonna pay more than a few bucks to dump it
Do you
in
have a-
Haverhill.
Do you have a bulk pickup once or twice a
No.
year in your
No.
contract?
No,
We
we have to
don't.
call and pay for it on our own. We tell them the item, they tell us the cost, we prepay, they set up the arrangements, we leave it on the curb, they,
Or you take it to the transfer station in
or you take it to
Georgetown.
the transfer station, those are your two choices.
Well, one thing you could do if you're interested is I could have the guy come here at your next meeting and you could ask a lot of questions about are there ways to defray the cost by changing the program itself? And I don't know the answers to those
Well, if
questions,
they could
but there
just-
might be.
Could they just provide us with the amount of money they've collected for those, singular pickups? Do they track it? If they're getting the money, we don't get it, right? So shouldn't that be?
The money that they get for recyclables, you mean?
No, for the single pickup. I'd like to know how, maybe there's not that much of it going on, but I'm curious as to how much of this single item pickup they're doing in our town.
What do you mean the single item pickup?
Like,
Bulk, the bulk pickup.
like a couch or you call them and you say, I have this big
Oh.
item.
Will they tell you what they're paying to dispose of the trash?
They charge you. That's
They
what
give you a flat rate of, based on the item, not
Right,
based on a
so-
pickup.
Correct, so I
So if you have a
just,
dresser, that's one price. If you have a
Oh,
couch,
oh,
that's
I
one
see.
price.
If you have a
refrigerator,
bulky item
yeah.
and you
correct.
put it out,
I've
what
never
do they
done
pay
this, I've
versus what
heard
you
about it.
pay?
I've done it.
Well,
So you
I-
know about this.
again, I would recommend to you have them come in because that, as I understand it, that does not affect the problem, which is that this budget is way up, but that does not in any way reflect bulky pickup. That's a whole separate
I'm just curious,
issue.
how much money have they collected from Groveland for that pickup? Just,
I think
you get a
at
month,
this
a dollar
point,
money.
and I certainly, again, if you want answers to questions like that and whatever else might come up, the best thing to do is to have the representative come here and meet with you. Because if I'm chasing down all those answers, you see this big giant list, I'm not getting other things done.
It's just one question, I'm not.
Let's
I don't
try and
know.
get some information on that for the next meeting, along with that conversation
Yeah.
that we voted on to get a 1-year extension.
Yeah, 1 year extension. Oh, did we vote on that? Yes. we
Yes.
did. Okay.
So what, am I hearing is something you want? the
Just,
bulk-
when you have that conversation on the 1-year extension.
Right,
And, whether to bid it or not bid it, whatever that process looks like.
yeah.
If you can also ask about those rates
How much
bulky
they
items?
in the same conversation.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's not gonna impact the price.
I know it's not gonna impact the price at all,
Probably
because
not
those are two
that
separate
much,
things.
Because they send out a separate truck, so it's not like they're collecting it at the same time they're collecting your trash and recycle. So it's
Yeah.
an added cost to them. That's why it's an added cost to whoever calls for that service.
So-
You don't have to call for the service, you can talk to them about it, pick up the truck and take it down to Georgetown.
Yeah.
But that's not gonna cut your cost one
Yeah,
cent.
it's
To
got
you, it
nothing
has
to do
no-
with the
so
cost,
you're saying it
so.
has no impact on
No
our cost?
bearing at all.
Ruth, what did you pay?
So, a neighbor of mine moved and left some stuff at the end of the street, and I called them, and it was like $25 to take a big old, like, pellet stove, and it
Wow.
was inexpensive.
That's
Okay.
very
But
interesting.
I think that's unusual. I don't think a lot of people do that. I don't think a lot of people bother making that call. I think they find a place to dump those items.
I usually take my stuff to Georgetown.
Right. I think the problem is everybody's trash is out.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
we've been talking, I don't know that we actually voted on this increase of 100,000
So
for that line item.
I have it at 700,000.
700,000, I don't think anybody else has any other comments on it. So let's, take a vote, all in favor of an increase of that line item?
Aye.
Okay. So now, if I'm looking at this correctly, whatever excess we thought we had is now down to less than 80?
I have 79, 829, 49. to
I'm
round
not
it off.
sure what you're quoting from,
So,
because my numbers don't say you've got $100,000 surplus right now.
What do your numbers say we have?
My number says 23,000 after your action last Monday night, and you remember you added a lot back into the budget.
Yeah, and we took some out.
The net
Mostly
effect.
out, we didn't add.
Right, the net effect was to bring the surplus, which was 99, down to 23. I already sent you those spreadsheets.
I thought we were doing that real time with your spreadsheet,
We were
though.
doing it real time.
The spreadsheet,
So, is there
actually,
another-
I don't know if I sent you that spreadsheet
I
yet,
don't think so,
because
'cause I
Our
would've looked at
spreadsheet had a $254,000 surplus.
That's what I have.
For
Which-
fact.
I don't know what spreadsheet that was.
That was the one that we were working real time
Yeah.
Monday night.
And I took your revenue number and subtracted it in real time, and we had a 200.
Spreadsheet that you had last Monday night showed a 99,000.
The one I emailed you last Monday when we were done showed 99,000.
Bill, I don't know what your spreadsheet said, because I didn't prepare it. I have to use my spreadsheet. I have to. I can't use somebody else's.
I thought that was the point of going through line by line and doing it real time, that
It was.
three
so-
finance people were going,
Correct.
and the
Yeah.
two boards were going line by line, voting, and then we were all agreeing line by line and by department what the totals were. And then we had a total budget versus what the income was. And I have 250-something thousand minus 60-ish for the van, right, Ruth? Minus whatever grant we might get. And then we just had another 100,000 increase into the trash line item,
Yes.
which means that I'm at about 80,000.
So I took your votes and I put them into the budget, the spreadsheet that you got over the weekend, the new omnibus article. I also put them in two other spreadsheets that I maintain. One is the so-called balancing formula that appears in the warrant, and the other one is a spreadsheet that I use to keep track of everything, because this spreadsheet that goes in the warrant does not have a nice, neat way to take the budget and derive these numbers. So you have to take the budget, then you have to pull a bunch of things out of it, and then you have to plug in the net town budget and the other pullouts. It's a little complex, but basically, I have a spreadsheet that I call pullouts, because it takes things out of the budget that are already counted in this spreadsheet. And this is the one that I use to tell me, are you balanced with revenue, over or under? So after I put in all of the budget that you voted last week, I come out with $23,665.50 surplus. So if we increase the trash budget by, I don't know what that number you just did, 100 grand?
100,000. Now we're deficit of
So
77,000.
we have a deficit. Now, in order to cover that, what I have to do is I have to go back and look at these assumptions on revenue and see if there's any place where I can tighten them, if there's anything that I can do to make that money available, and then get back to you and tell you basically, here's what we need to do to make that possible.
Right.
All right, hold on 1 second, because we had a 5-hour meeting Monday night on budget and line items.
Yep.
Ruth, what did you have regarding Monday night and line item, final budget numbers? Do you have that ready? Do you have that handy? All right, Kathy, what did you have?
I don't have the cemetery in. That's my problem. If I put the cemetery in, I can get it. But if you go just go by the total department, the selectmen budget, I have 91,550.
So if you are interested in doing this, all you have to do is the following.
But,
The omnibus article that I sent you, okay?
yeah,
You can go through it and you can check it to see if it's got all the budgets you voted. I'm quite sure it does.
the one that's in the warrant that you sent to us, that one?
No, the one in the warrant is just a placeholder.
I know, that's what
no
I
good.
thought. I didn't look at that.
That's last year's budget. The new one I sent you over the weekend, which has all the actions you voted, okay?
You sure you sent it? Okay, let me just look. I'm not sure. that he sent
What's
that. I
that?
got the draft warrant. and
No, that's okay.
I got the draft warrant, I got the email from Sunday night. But I
Catherine,
don't,
could you print that?
I don't know.
Please.
I'm just gonna look.
So that omnibus this is the document that you use. It goes into the town meeting warrant, I write in the front. It's called
Yep.
Summary of Revenues and Expenditures. And I've got about 10 versions of this. As we've gone through the fiscal year, I keep updating it and changing it. So, the last one of these that I produced, which was the one last Monday night, had a $99,023 surplus, something like that. You took actions that night, which changed that. I put all those in, and it came out a $23,000 surplus. So obviously now increase, so if you want to know how I do it, I'd be more than happy to send you the spreadsheet that shows how I do it.
No. I don't want you to show me how you do it. I can figure it out. I'm pretty good at math.
You send,
I want to know, basically, where you did it. So I agree. The 20,346,111 was what we agreed to
That's what I have.
last week for a budget. That's good. So what I based these surplus on was your number, one of these, right? And it had originally 20,879,055.50. From that, I subtracted the 259,111 and the 30,000, which left a net of 20,598,145. From which I subtracted the original 23,46,111, and that's where I get the, and that's where we came up with the 252,034.
And you cannot do it that way, because
You did it that way, how come I can't do it that same way?
I don't do it that way. How I get this, how I derive this spreadsheet, I have not given you copies of that. I haven't shared that with you. You haven't seen it.
This one?
he's talking
How
about
I
the revenue.
developed
one.
this
Yeah, the
spreadsheet.
revenue forecast.
Look, let me
Thanks,
point
Tom.
something out to you. See the number that says town, under expenses? See the number that says town budget, 5,741,356, or I don't know which version you're looking at.
Take out this column.
But,
Um,
yeah.
All right,
5,745,
The
428.
budget that you folks voted as of last week adds up to 20,346,111. Okay?
Yeah, so far.
That 20 million budget gets translated into a bunch of different pieces here. So in order to prepare this spreadsheet, you have to extract from the gross budget all the things that are counted separately in here, because they start off in the 20 million, but then they get pulled out into different categories here, and you have to pull them out, otherwise this means nothing.
Right, I did that on my own 2 weeks ago, to
All right,
tie
well,
out to your numbers.
I don't,
We didn't
so
vote for the
I
consulting
took that
service.
budget,
It was
I
selectmen
have
budget
another
of
spreadsheet
$30,000. We didn't,
where I put all these numbers in, and then I ask it, I've
oh, that's,
built all
the
the
30,000 was
formulas,
the
and I
reserve.
say,
Okay, that's fine.
pull out
But he has different numbers here.
PRSD budget, pull out Whittier Tech, pull out Essex South Shore, and all these other things, and then give me the net town budget with all these things missing, and that's what goes in that line that says town budget, okay? Because obviously that town budget on this version,
That's right.
version is as of April 8th, so it reflects all your votes from the 5th. The town budget is now 5,741,856.
I have,
Hold on, Kathy.
Okay.
342.
Net of what's on this sheet that has to get pulled out of this $20 million budget in order to
25.
make sense on this sheet.
Oh, wait.
So I created a spreadsheet which is a crosswalk between these two, okay? That spreadsheet tells me what to put in this town budget line, because it's a derivative of this, the total town budget less all these categories. You follow me? Because all these categories are in this $20 million budget, and you have to account for them in order to not double count for them. So I do that, I put the net budget in, and then the formula down here simply takes the revenue minus the expenditures and says, are we balanced or not? Now remember, as part of this year's attempt to create this budget, I stripped out 135,000 of revenue that you have had in past years. that was $50,000 that you take every year out of overlay and $85,000 you take every year out of free cash. Because I said to you, I'm going to try to give you a budget so that all of your annually recurring operating expenses are funded by annually recurring revenue, taxation, et cetera. Because free cash and overlay surplus, by definition, are not recurring revenues. You might have 35,000 in overlay this year, and you may have 0 next year, or you might have a negative number. Free cash, the same thing. So you can't rely on that 135,000 to be there every year in order to balance the budget. So my goal was to take those out and still balance. Now, as of prior to this trash collection discussion, you are balanced to the tune of $23,000. If we increase the trash collection budget, we are going to go over budget, and then I'm going to have to work on this to figure out how to make that work. There's a lot of moving parts to this thing, as you might well imagine. So I can't give you the answer tonight. All I can tell you is that I got to plug it in, and I got to start looking at the numbers to figure this out.
All right, so
I do think it's, remember, last week, we did a couple of things. We increased the Essex North Shore Tech budget by, I don't know, about 20,000. We increased a bunch of things in the town budget here and there. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I've got a sheet that tells me that. And the net effect of all that was to eliminate about 70,000 and was to use 70,000 in revenue, taking us from 99 to 23. Oh, that's fine. But if we're going to increase this, if it's necessary to increase this trash budget by that much money, and I cannot sit here tonight and say with absolute precision that's the right number, then I'm going to have to figure out how to do that. And one of the ways to figure it out may be to have to put back in some of that non-recurring revenue that I'd hoped to take out.
Right. Okay, so, in its simplest terms, broken down in very simple terms, revenues minus expenses will give you your surplus or your deficit.
Yep.
Okay, so far I'm so good. So, you had given us, originally requested, 20,577,594 expense side. We trimmed that down by a couple $100,000 to make it 23,46,111. So, what is your revenue number not 20,879,055.50?
Bill, respectfully, you're throwing numbers at me, and this has to be
I'm gonna throw this sheet
done.
at you. This is the sheet you gave me.
Well, you just quoted
The
numbers, and
total-
I don't know where they came from. I mean, this has
Total
to be
revenue,
done
total
with
revenue.
precision.
I just want to know, what total revenue, Kevin, please? Just one number.
20,598,144.50 as of April 8th,
The
But-
20 million, what is it?
April 8th,
No, I
20 million,
20 million?
20 million, 390, put on my reading glasses, 20,598,144.50.
Thank you.
that's revenue, you said.
Right.
Okay. So I guess I've got the same number, Kevin. I took your number and I did that stuff in my spreadsheet and I have 20,598,145. You've got 144.50. So we're good. We agree on both the expense and the revenue side. So again, in simplest terms, my revenue number is greater than my expense number even after I just increased it. My trash collection to 700,000, I still have 139,829 difference between what you're telling me for revenue and what we just calculated for expense. I have 139,829.49. So please, if you can tell me where I'm wrong, I would so appreciate it, because I really need to lock in on these numbers and understand them so that I own them.
Bill, again, I don't have the numbers in front of me that you're quoting from, so I can't tell you what you're looking at. I can't tell you how you computed it.
Whoa.
I understand you're gonna tell me again.
20,598,144 you just gave me, didn't you?
Yes.
20,598,144.50.
So you know where that number came from, that's your number?
Yes.
Okay. And the 20,346,111, you know where that came from, right?
Yes.
Because you sent us a spreadsheet.
Yep.
Okay, so if I take the 20,346,111, I add the difference between what we just did.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Right?
Oh, okay, I'll tell you where the problem is. You forgot to put in $228,365 worth of expense that does not get voted at town meeting and is not in this budget.
Where is that?
That is the reserve,
What is
it's
that?
all identified on the spreadsheet, right here. It says right down the bottom, other non-appropriated expenses. Reserve for abatements, $130,000. Cherry sheet charges, $87,390. Direct to library, that's an offset, $10,975. And snow and ice is currently zero, and I suspect will be. Those non-appropriated expenditures total $228,365. Now, when you take and you put those in, the surplus you're describing
Goes
doesn't
away.
go, doesn't, yeah, it goes
Oh,
away.
absolutely, now I get it, I can see, I can do the math.
Where's
I'm
that?
really good
Well,
at
it's all right there in that
Yeah, right
spreadsheet,
here.
folks. You just
It's-
have to understand
It's
what it's
here.
telling you.
It's this stuff, which, you know,
Maintained all along,
I
we don't
guess-
have a real surplus anyway.
I guess,
It's a tough year.
So we can't do that transfer for,
Well, you can, Mike. I'm not telling you you can't. What I'm telling you is that I now have to go back and look at this, and the worst-case scenario, it's worst case in my opinion, because I'd hope to avoid it, is we may have to put back in some of that $135,000 of one-time revenue that you've used every year that I took out, because I was hoping to,
Because the
I was hoping to
OPEB
get
is
you
in.
off dependence upon that money, but it may well be the case that the only way we get to balance this thing is if you put that money back in.
Can I make
I
just
don't know.
one quick comment on that?
yes, please.
We didn't have the money in the budget, in the operating budget, and we really wanted to make a concerted effort to, 5 years ago when I started, to establish our stabilization fund. And without taking away services in the budget, we had a conversation, we made a very conscious decision to use free cash for that. And that's why, it's not that we were engaging in a bad practice, we were finding the money where we could and prioritizing stabilization funds, and it was in free cash. And so, since it was stabilization, we used the extra money that we had, whenever we did, to put it into stabilization, and that's how we did that. So, it was a conscious decision, because that's just where we had the money, without squeezing services. So I'm comfortable with taking OPEB funding from free cash, except for the fact that there's not a lot of free cash this year.
No.
This number's-
Well, the good news is, and I'm still working on some of these numbers, in the warrant, you see that there's a big chunk of free cash going to a supplemental transfer for the fire department for this year. I think we're gonna be able to avoid that. So that money won't come out of free cash if I'm successful, and you'll still have it in free cash, and you can use it if we need that 85,000, we'll have it available. So, everybody's just gonna understand, this is a very dynamic process, because things are changing as I'm doing this. Things are, constantly evolving. So, the trash collection budget is just in the last couple days, and it wasn't happy news. Remember, again, there's 3 moving parts in this budget still. The trash collection, the health insurance, and the property casualty insurance. The property casualty insurance is funded as high as it can possibly go, and it will probably go down, but I don't know by how much. The health insurance budget, I don't know yet, because I know that the current year's budget is inadequate. It's gonna run over 10 grand. And I have not been able to find a rational basis for how that budget was done. And the only way to do it is to spreadsheet each and every single employee that takes it, what plan they're on, the GIC rates, and put that spreadsheet together. And I've not had an opportunity to do that. The third moving part is the trash collection. We're sneaking up on that one, and there'll be some conversations. I think at 700,000, you have funded it beyond where it needs to be. So if I can get this thing to balance with the 700,000 in there, either using free cash or tweaking other numbers here and there, if I can get it to balance with the 700 in, then you've got pretty good assurance that with whatever increase happens in health insurance and whatever decrease happens in property casualty, we're probably in pretty good shape. But, you know, you just have to understand that these numbers are still a little dynamic. Those three numbers are moving. There's also, remember, I've got a number in here for local aid because that's what the governor proposed. But the history of local aid suggests that the governor's proposal always becomes the bottom, the basement. It tends to improve when the House and the Senate get hold of it, and then the conference committee finally gets it. So there may be more money there when that finally emerges, and in fact, what the Republican caucus just did was added a substantial amount to the governor's budget. Will that emerge? I don't know, but it's just an indication of these numbers are dynamic because numbers always move during the budget year as you get closer to town meeting, and I'm constantly refining and changing things in order to keep it in balance. I apologize, I don't always get the opportunity to share with you every single change I make because they're really very dynamic. But I can assure you that I'm constantly tracking them, I'm reviewing them with the town accountant, and we're keeping it, you know, in balance. So tonight, it has gone substantially out of balance, but not by a gigantic number. And as you can see, if you just take the free cash and the overlay money that you've used in the past, you'll be back in balance and have a surplus again. So there's no gigantic problem here. It's just a matter of I have to have time when I'm not sitting here in a meeting to try to go work through this and get it rebalanced. Okay?
Except that next year, we take this exact same budget, we don't have the $250,000 aid.
Yes,
And
quite
so,
right.
to create the exact same budget, we're gonna start with $250,000 less. So
Right.
I think that just goes back to the point that we've been trying to be careful, we've been trying
Yeah.
to be fair, we've been trying to run.
And that's the point of the 5-hour meeting,
That
to
was
go
the point
line
of
by
the
line.
5-hour meeting. It was painful, but it was necessary. And we don't have free cash laying around to just make people happy. We're making people, you know, we're providing what we think is a good and fair work environment.
Yes.
Rolling over vacation days, letting people be safe during COVID, all of that. But we need to stay disciplined and careful with our expenses.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you. But one thing I've said to you in writing, and I'll say it again, is the problem causing the stress on the budget this year isn't all the departments, because that's still well under 3%. The target all along was in that vicinity, 2.5. The problem is the Pentucket Regional School, not the fault of the regional school,
We
but
understand
more the
that,
fault of the Chapter 70 formula,
Mhm.
went up by $1.2 million. Now, this town can't take, you can't absorb in your revenue picture a $1.2 million increase in your regional school budget. It's not possible.
You know that.
All right.
So the conversation, that's why I've recommended to you in my memo, the conversation must be had with the regional school committee and the superintendent to say, look, we barely got balance this year. We used $256,000 of ESSER 2 money to do it. That money's not there next year. Where's this all going next year? Because we can't balance this budget next year. This is a problem, and you're quite right, Ruth.
Priority for
You're
us for next
absolutely
year. We
right.
know that. We know
But you
that.
can't balance a $1.2 million increase by making small changes. I mean, you'd have to eliminate whole departments in order to make your town budget
We can
balance.
continue to make discipline careful.
Yeah, I'm just saying, make all the little tweaks and things, and you might shave 50,000 out of your budget, but you got a $1.2 million increase. That's the problem.
All right, so we got hung up on
departments.
trash for a while. Wait a second. So there's health insurance that I think we touched on, and then we have the annual audit that you have on your list of 11 things projects to focus on.
Well,
Go ahead, Kathy.
Oh, I was just going to say, recall at the last meeting that, I was able to give you the numbers to correct the school budget, and
Yeah.
that was good. And so in the past, when there's been a reallocation formula like this, it requires, I think some of us will endeavor this summer, some of us little brainiacs that love numbers, we'll sit down and we'll paw through it, because the last time we did that, and I did that when I was on the finance board, our Senator Tarr's office was able to get us a sit down with the Department of Education, and we were able to sway the allocation so that it was a little more fair. And I think that it's one of those situations where I don't know that they even know how they do their formula, because to be honest, I spent a day there with John Susi. People came in and out of the room. They never really completely answered our questions about how they came up with this allocation to Groveland. It was vastly unfair. In this case, it was totally biased on Groveland. And then they just made an adjustment and said, what do you think of this? And we're like, good to go. So I think that that kind of a thing will definitely be a priority. We're not going to sit here and wait till next year and see what happens. And it doesn't really have anything to do with the school committee. It has everything to do with this state foundation calculation. But, by way of background, like, I'm dating myself now, but when I actually started on the finance board in this town, and that was because the whole finance board quit, and the town was under oversight by the Department of Revenue for a few years, because we had gotten into a lot of difficulty. We did all this ourselves because we didn't have a finance director. We had a great accountant. I think Susan Yasko might have been on board at that point, now on our finance board, and we did it. I understand what you're saying about all the moving parts, but it's not too complex for us to understand.
Sure.
I get it. It's just that, I look at this sheet here, and property casualty is at 240,000. And I look at the sheet that we were looking at the other night, and property casualty is at another number. So I honestly can't say, did we vote a higher number right then and there, or did the finance board vote it without us? Because you voted the same night that we voted.
Yes, it was in
So,
conjunction.
so it was requested at 211,500. I don't have in my notes that we voted 240,000, did we? Or maybe we did. It was a 5-hour meeting.
What
240,000 for what?
Property and casualty insurance, it has a finance board recommendation of 240,000, requested at 211,500.
I reported to you that the budget, the quote you got from Maya was 237, and you voted 240.
Okay,
Yes,
so it's
I have that
211,
too.
so we do have 240, okay, good. So that's clarified. And the issue of the overlay, overlay is set aside for the people that get abatements on their homes and also to offset taxes that aren't paid. But at some point, that money must be released to overlay surplus when it's no longer needed. And overlay surplus is the taxpayers' money. And when we use that to help balance the budget, we're actually decreasing the tax rate for our taxpayers. So I have no problem using overlay surplus to reduce the burden on the taxpayer, especially this year where the Pentucket building project is going to hit them again really, really hard. So-
I'm reviewing overlay surplus with the town accountant and the Department of Revenue. We started today, we're gonna be working on it tomorrow. Remember, on the bottom of this page, you see that overlay number, 130,000? So the overlay is a reserve
I know what it is.
against which
Yes.
gets applied uncollected taxes and abatements and appellate tax court wins, things like
Yeah.
that. So, each year, you create an overlay, and then as time goes by,
Right.
all the taxes get paid or not, the abatements get granted, appellate tax board appeals get adjudicated, and they all go against the overlay because because the assumption in your budget is you're gonna collect 100% of your taxes, and of course we don't. So the overlay is a reserve against the fact that we don't. And some of what we put in the levy, you end up not levying because you give abatements for the elderly, the blind, veterans,
And I know, yes.
and there's appellate tax board cases.
But my point is that the.
So, here's the thing, with each passing year, the amount of money that's out there still uncollected is a hit against overlay, and you cannot release dollars from the overlays for all the prior years that we hold them,
I
until
understand.
such time as the uncollected taxes
Yes.
are less than the overlay for a given fiscal year.
Yes,
So here is your dilemma right now. Remember I told you about that 650,000 in uncollected taxes we've got sitting out there? Well, that means that $650,000 of overlay is being held. We can't release it. It's being held in overlay. Simultaneously, because of the way Massachusetts law is written, they take the same 650,000 and they hold it against surplus revenue, your bottom line in your budget. So the Department of Revenue does a double reserve against unpaid taxes. They hold it against free cash and they hold it against the overlay. So what I'm analyzing right now, after getting the news last week that we're sitting on 650,000 of unpaid taxes, how much overlay can we release in the overlay surplus? The overlay you spend down here, called assessor's overlay, the technical term in statute is overlay surplus.
yes. I
And
know
it's the
that.
amount of money which no longer has to be held in a given year's overlay, and they go back 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years.
And the assessors have to vote that.
Well, frankly, we do the calculation, they don't do that, and then we identify it to them and we say, would you please vote
Yes.
to release this? So, I'm working on that calculation because the 650,000 in uncollected taxes seemed to be a bit of a surprise, not to you, but to your financial staff. I'm a little concerned
Can I
about
just say something
the
about that
overlays,
before you
One
keep
second.
telling
because,
people
now
off?
think about this. If your overlay is $130,000 a year,
Mhm.
and you got 650,000 in uncollected taxes, how many years of overlays must be there still on the books in order to create 650,000 available against that liability? And as soon as I started doing the mental gymnastics, I said, okey-doke, I'm a little concerned, because that tells me that you've got to have at least 5, 6, 7 overlays fully funded at $130,000 a year, with never a dime released, but in point of fact, you've been releasing money from those overlays each year. So I'm kind of wondering how.
Well, I'd like to shed some light on that
Go ahead,
for you.
Kathy.
And
So
so
last
I'm
week,
working with Department of Revenue to try to figure that out for you, because right now my concern is that money's been released from overlay that shouldn't have been.
okay, so last week when you brought this up, I was concerned, and my chairman would ask you for a copy of the list of properties, and you said that he was not allowed to have it. So I contacted our audit team and I asked them about our audit. They said that Groveland is in the best condition in years. We spoke about the amount of tax title. It's $652,000. All of it is secured with tax liens, which means the property can't go anywhere. Half of that money is interest that is accumulated on the properties. 1/3 of the portion of that 652,000 is connected to Valley Screw, which we all know is almost untouchable. We're not going to get the tax money from it. We're not sure what we can do with it because it's a Superfund cleanup site that is it the EPA? I don't know who they
It's
are.
federal EPA,
Whatever
state
they are.
Department of
They
Environment.
regulate what we can do with it. As I looked, and I haven't gone all the way through all the properties on the list, but as I scanned through them, I recognized old developments like Apple Blossom, where a parcel of land was kind of left behind, and then the developer didn't want it. It wasn't attached to a person who bought the property, so obviously taxes accumulated, developer walked off and leaves it on our hands. So in talking to the auditors and then talking to our town planner, I feel that this is a perfect fit for the town planner to go look at these parcels and determine if there's any value to having them sold. The auditors informed me there's a company that if we wanted to, would for free of charge, look through the list and take properties that are saleable, pay us and sell them. So I think we have this under control. I think our prior financial directors, Denise Demkowski, Greg Lebrecht, and Tom Moses, all did the right things. The audit report says that 4 months after the close of the year, property that has not paid taxes is put through and tax liens are placed on it, so it cannot be sold. It can't be taken away from us. The taxpayers are protected. And again, the audit report cites our good reserves in stabilization, our good accounting, and that fiscally we are in very, very good shape as far as a balance sheet for a town. So I'm happy with what we have right now. I realize there's more to do, but I also feel like we just started up a planning department. We're on the verge of perhaps hiring a town administrator. So all of this will be something that they can work with together. We don't need to do this right now. We need to just get our warrant posted. I think this is not the priority right now because this is secured. This
Is that-
property isn't going anywhere.
Is that something that, did you talk to Rebecca about that?
Yes, I did.
What'd she
actually.
have to say?
She was real all in on it because she can, I'm not a property person. She could actually go out to the parcels and see, like on Apple Blossom and Stonehenge or Stone Ridge. I recognize the name of the developments where some of these parcels are.
Yeah.
So they're like leftover pieces that didn't get attached to a homeowner. That then the developer, especially Apple Blossom, that was a long time ago, that developer just walked away on us. So maybe it's also for something for the planning board to look at going forward so that we don't end up with these slivers of property that are taxable and no one's held accountable for the taxes on it. Attach it to a property that somebody has to be taxed on.
Yeah.
But overall, I think that it's a great use of our planning department, to let
I
us
think
know
if,
what can be done with it.
yeah, I mean, if Rebecca is okay with charging that, I think she'd do a phenomenal job like she does with everything.
I told her the same.
And she definitely has all the background information on land and what we want to do going forward, so.
Right. And the Valley Screw property
Oh.
is a thorn in our side.
There were comments on
Oh.
the crier about that building this
I
weekend
saw
that I
that.
tried to shed some light in. I spent years trying to facilitate some kind of arrangement with the state and the feds to no avail.
And it will be something that we continue to work on, but it's not a sign of bad management on the part of the town. That's a super fun cleanup site that fell on us. And that property is significantly tied up because of that.
All right, so do we have anything else to go through? I have one question, but I want to see if the board has
Just
any other.
On the accountant's salary, that's the only one that I got some feedback from a town resident who did a survey of 42 communities and was just saying, I'm just trying to.
Are you still on the memo I gave the board, or are you on the budget
Yeah,
now?
No, still on your memo.
Okay.
So,
So I wasn't looking for board action really on anything except the trash contract, and I think you gave me the guidance. You want me to try to get a one-year deal and then come back and talk to you. The rest of this stuff was more or less reporting to you what I'm working on, unless there's anything on here you don't want me to work on, in which case,
Well,
please tell me, because
yes, that's.
I'm sure you're not gonna shed any tears over being told.
Well,
Yeah, let's work.
I have one comment that I wanted to ask, but go ahead, Kathy. 'cause-
Well, no, go ahead, I'm gonna open up his email and see that.
All right, so as far as the union contracts, this far into the year, where we are with the budget, what's been happening the last year with COVID, why aren't we just trying to offer a one-year contract with a 2% increase?
You can.
With a 2%
That's-
increase, given where we are, and this is not to say that we don't appreciate any of the departments at all, but to say, we should have started this union contract negotiation 4 months ago, right?
Yeah.
So my suggestion would be to offer a one-year extension with a 2% increase, with the understanding that these conversations start to take place way before April, because there's just not enough time between April and the end of May to get this stuff done. And the anticipation, the expectation would be that next year we'll have a better understanding of our revenues, we'll have a better understanding of our spend, and then we'll be able to be in a better position to offer a longer-term contract to these people who rightly deserve it. But I think it's just too late to do that at this point. Any comments on that,
I agree with that.
Kevin?
Well, the decision how long the term of the contract will be is not a unilateral decision. because remember, these folks have bargaining rights, so
Mhm.
it's a negotiation. If the union already had a one-year contract last year, and what they're telling me is they're a little impatient about that.
Which union?
That doesn't mean that, and one thing we want to think about, we don't want to get too far into this conversation.
No, I know.
Because this is bargaining strategy that should be an executive session. But, having said that, I certainly don't think there's anything wrong with doing a one-year contract if that's the board's desire because of the uncertainty of what you're looking at next year with respect to town finances, particularly looking at that Pentucket budget and understanding, as Ruth said, there's a $250,000 revenue gap
Yeah.
built in before you even start to try to write your budget next year. So does that translate into saying to the unions, hey, we can only do a one-year deal this year, 2%? You know, some towns didn't do anything, so 2%. And maybe look at other provisions in the contract that are non-money things to try to get it settled. Personally, I think it's a reasonable posture. But I wouldn't want to get into too much more detail than that 1/100,000 conversation, because too much more gets into strategy that we should be.
No, I understand
Executive
that.
session.
But we're also late in the game. You've got a list of things that
Yeah.
need to get done. And it seems that at this point, that makes the most sense. And presenting anything otherwise is just not gonna go anywhere.
Realistically, there's only so many hours in the day, and yeah, I mean, you know.
And I wanna make this perfectly clear to these unions that it has nothing to do with disrespect or lack of appreciation, to the police, to the water, to the highway, the people who have showed up all year long during the pandemic to do the jobs of the town and to protect the people. It has nothing to do with that. It has more to do with financially where we are, time-wise where we are, and really having the wherewithal to get together a contract that represents our appreciation for you, which is going to take longer than the 2 months or 2.5 months that we have on top of everything else that needs to get done. So I want to make that perfectly clear that it is not lack of respect, it is not lack of appreciation. It's just a bottom line as to where we are and where I'm coming from as the things that we have to do and what makes sense at this point to start talking about this January timeframe. Kathy, you want to say something?
Well, no, after you finish the contracts, I was looking at the
All
list
right.
of items.
Jason,
Finish
any
that.
comments on the contracting
Contracts.
stuff?
No, I think that
Items.
makes perfectly good sense.
Okay. Ed, anything from you?
No, I'm all set.
Bill?
Yeah,
Without getting too deep into it?
very superficial here. I don't think it has as much to do about money. So I don't want the union to think that we're going to be shortchanging them next year. It's more, last year was COVID.
Yeah.
No one wanted to get together during COVID because they weren't sure about the safety risks and the health risks. This year, I think it's more a factor of, we have an interim finance director in place, not a full-time person. And I feel it's more a decision that we'd like that full-time person to negotiate those contracts with your limited time and being an interim. That's where I'm coming from. It had nothing to do with finances. If they deserve it, and people that deserve it, we've always found a way to make it happen. So I want to just cut that conversation about it's money. It's not. It's really the situation that we found ourselves in last year with COVID and this year with an interim that really is driving that request to do one more year, and then we'll get back to normal, I would think, I would hope.
All right, so in the interest of moving along, I think we're done with this piece of the conversation. I want to.
By the way, Catherine found the
Yeah, I'm going
vote you
back to
took.
that. Yeah, so I want
So-
to move back to the request for the,
Are we done with the list though, because we didn't do item 7? I want to just make sure we're very specific.
you can go through item 7 quickly, we can go back to item 7.
Okay, on item 7, I would just prefer, again, along the same line as what Selectman O'Neill was saying, that as an interim, I would let this analysis of our property casualty, workman's comp, roll forward another year for our permanent person to look into I mean, you spoke at the beginning about whether we should insure a building, that if it burns down, we won't build it. All of that is kind of a longer-term point of view on this property casualty. So I noticed you have 247 in here, and we voted 240. So should we be changing the number that we voted?
No, actually, I think there's a typo here. I believe
Oh, that's
it's
a sep-
230,
that should be-
237, not 247.
So it should be 237, and that's what we should have
just-
voted?
Let me check. There's just
Oh,
way
okay.
too many
Which
numbers
line item
running
you
through
want?
my
Number
head right
seven?
now.
No, that I see, are you referring back to the
Oh,
budget?
in here, it's, yeah, I was just looking at it, because I thought.
Kathy, can you go in the Maya policy book sitting on the top of my desk? And
Under
see if the
insurance,
renewal
property
proposal
casualty,
is inside the
240.
flap? Thanks.
Line 18 is the total insurance budget. So whatever page line 18 is on, should be the first page or so.
No, oh, line 18.
What?
I've got line 117, but that's in my.
Oh,
Excel
yeah,
spreadsheet.
117, but it's 18 on the
Yeah,
number.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
117.
What?
Look, when you, it's underneath,
What group is it under? That's
under
all I-
municipal buildings.
Thank you. That's
Yeah.
all I
Right
need.
above total government.
That's all I need.
I
I
know.
don't need line number 8 million.
I'm sorry.
What number we, no, what, 240?
Property casualty insurance.
And you're saying 237, leave it at 240.
Whatever, yeah, I'm just double checking it, that's all. Well, he had 247 here, and we had it at 240.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure it's okay, that's all.
Okay, renewal proposal
Got it.
is here.
240, right.
And so long as that's a typo, then we leave it, that's fine.
Okay, so we all set with that
Was
list then?
just checking,
Yeah, if you can find the email, that'd be good.
in item number 7.
We're just trying to find that Maya renewal quotation.
Okay, but my point was to check the number, but also just to say that don't do all of this, study right now. Let's put a pin on that and just get the new quote and get it in the budget.
All right. So let's go back to the 10 days vacation time. So last, what?
Is that this thing?
Yeah, so last year, Denise had requested that the board consider for this year only, which we're gonna reconsider for this year too,
Okay.
to change the vacation policy across the board to allow all employees to carry over any unused vacation
Okay.
time, provided that it is used by June 30th, 2021, which would be 2022 this year, with the caveat that if an employee chooses to leave or retire before September 30th, now 2021, only 10 days of carryover may be brought back, and if an employee chooses to leave or retire on or after October 1st, now 2021, would not be eligible to buy back any of the fiscal year 21 carryover.
I
That's
like
what we
that.
did
Yeah.
last year.
So do you want me to make that motion again? Because that was what I was thinking about.
I'm okay with repeating that.
Okay, do you want me to do that now?
Well, we're back into that discussion, so we may as well finish that.
Okay, so I will make a motion to allow all employees to carry over any unused vacation time, provided that it is used by June 30th, 2022, with the caveat that if an employee chooses to leave or retire before September 30th, 2021, only 10 days of carryover may be brought back, and if an employee chooses to leave or retire on or after October 1st, 2021, he or she would, or it, is it it? There's a word missing. It would
You-
not be eligible, oh, here, I don't know the word that's missing.
Yeah, it would not be, the time off would not be
Wait.
eligible.
Okay, so let me say that one more time. So if an employee chooses to leave or retire on or after October 1st, 2021,
One.
the carryover vacation would not be eligible to buy back any of the FY '21 carryover.
Correct.
That
Is there a
still doesn't
second?
sound
Second.
right. I
So
feel like the
did
words
you-
are a little wrong again.
Kathy, did you just make a motion that cloned what's in these minutes?
Yes,
Yes.
and where
Okay,
I,
because I didn't write all that
where
down.
I stumbled is right down at the last,
October 21st.
October
Just missing a
1st.
couple of words
There's
there.
a word missing in there, and I stumbled on that. October 1st, it says, if an employee chooses to leave or retire on or after October 1st, 2021, the carryover would not be eligible to buy back, no, that doesn't make sense.
The time?
The employee would not be eligible to buy back any of the 20.
Okay, the word employee, thank you. Let's put the word employee in then. So then I will just restate it to clarify, thank you. So starting with, if an employee chooses to leave and retire before September 30th, 2021, only 10 days of carryover may be brought back. And if an employee chooses to leave or retire on or after October 1st, 2021, the employee would not be eligible to buy back any of the FY21 carryover. That's the motion.
And then we got a second. Any further consideration?
No.
Ed?
All set.
Nope. Kathy, you good?
I'm good, thank
All right.
you.
All in favor of that lengthy motion about time off?
Yep.
I would just ask a favor, please. Would you be willing to send me an email tomorrow with that language? Otherwise, I gotta get it straight right now, because I can just imagine the recording secretary listening to this tape, trying to figure out what we just did.
I'll do it right now.
I'm sitting here and I can't figure it out.
I'll do it right now.
Okay, Mike's doing it right now.
So you wanna take over
Oh,
the agenda? I'll do the email.
what do we got next here?
So basically, the intent,
Items to be completed, discussed before annual town meeting is the only item.
the intent is to have the same motion
Yep,
as
Only with
last
the
year.
dates changed.
With the dates changed.
yep.
And the
Okay.
word that's
And the
missing.
That's
word-
fine, then we're good. I'll just
And
take
the
it
word
right off of
employee
you.
is put in.
Okay,
All right,
thanks.
so you don't need this?
You should have it from last year, too.
Yeah, she just gave it to us.
I gave a copy of it. I
All
have
right.
it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, yeah.
The recording secretary.
I can send it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not here, I don't
I'll
think.
write something up and hand it to me. That's
So
No, it's a
I
one
think
pager.
this items to be completed before annual town meeting was
Thanks.
probably already discussed for the most part. Is there any comments on that?
We just said, okay, so we're okay with the property casualty, just stick with what we have and don't do a study on it at this time. Time constraints. That was my point.
Yep.
Okay, so, and the trash contract we already spoke about. So, health insurance cost, we're gonna stay with the state program, I would say, right? That's what we've done with. In other words, just keep everything consistent.
The health insurance, you're saying that there's a nearly $10,000
What?
Looks like somewhere between a $9,000 and a $10,000 overrun in the current fiscal year.
That's the motion.
number 10 on the email.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, great,
Wondered how it overran.
Let me look at
good,
that.
super, thanks. Because I want to do a memo, an email to send out to all department heads.
What are you looking at, Kathy?
I'm just looking at the variance, I wanted to see if it was running over already, I didn't notice that, I looked through the variance to see how everything was trending, I didn't notice that health insurance looked like it was in trouble.
Are we not charging somebody this year that should be paying for it? Just asking.
For the
One of-
insurance? Do you know where the overage is coming from, Kevin?
All that Ellen was able to tell me, and it's in your variance report that you all saw about a week ago, was that the gross expenditure level per month, if it continued through June 30, would go over by $9,300, something like that. However, it isn't necessarily the case that the current monthly amount will in fact be exactly the same, and here's why. An employee leaves, and they're on the town insurance, and then a replacement comes and they're not. Now we save money. An employee leaves who's not on insurance, and a new one comes, and they go on, and we're not budgeted for that. So it's not a completely static thing, but our best guesstimate is that it looks like it's gonna run over. Now, what I wish I had was a spreadsheet I could go to, and it would go down every single employee's name and which plan they had. And then I could look at that and I could immediately say, okay, this one left, this one came, and figure out why. But I don't have that. So what I'm doing to create this for next year, so you're not in the same situation, is creating that spreadsheet, which is the norm, that's the way treasurers do it, and then putting in everybody who's on the plan, and then putting in a few extras that aren't on the plan for the possibility that other people will come on the plan. So you budget exactly what you need, and then you budget a couple of surplus ones in case someone new comes on the plan during the year. That's the normal method of budgeting for employee health insurance, because you can't be precise with it. Not possible.
That may already exist. A couple of years back,
Yep.
we did,
Something
might have
like
been
that.
Ellen,
It was Ellen.
did a analysis and noticed that there was
Person.
a person that was getting health insurance and not paying for it.
Oh,
Correct.
oh, that's a problem.
That is a problem. So she's already done a lot of that analysis. So without having to recreate the wheel, she might be able to do the same analysis based on payroll records and look at and see what people's contributions are, if any, and if it's all
Yeah,
right.
we've got that much work. What we don't have is that spreadsheet I was discussing. So we get a bill every month from the GIC. And
Yeah.
it lists every single employee and which plan they're on and how much they owe and how much we owe. And we're collecting that by deductions from the employee's pay. And then we match that with the town fee, then goes the check. So we've got that much. What we don't have is the calculation that created this budget total. We don't have that. At least I don't have it. It might be in the computer. I haven't found it yet. We'll look again. But I'm gonna create that because that's the normal way treasurers create the health budget. They list all the employees that are currently on it, then they make some assumptions, and it's good because we're a small town, so I can ask so-and-so, hey, are you going on insurance next year? And it actually comes down to that kind of a practical thing. You ask people. And then you put them on, and then when you're all done, and you get it as accurate as you think you can get it, then you throw a couple of extra plans in there with no one in them
Yeah.
to handle
And
personnel changes during the
additions,
year,
yeah.
so that you're adequately budgeted. And the idea is,
Literally.
normally the health insurance budget turns a surplus. That's what you want.
Yeah.
So you over budget, and you know you're gonna, and that's what's gonna throw to the bottom line of free cash.
I'll bet you find it. I know Denise was very thorough, and she wouldn't have just waved a magic wand and picked a number.
Yeah, so.
She based it
so
on
there
some
probably is
type
one
of reality
somewhere.
in history.
I just gotta find the thing
Yeah,
and then
it's there.
see what it said and then update it. And if there isn't one, create it. Not a big deal, because I create it right off the GIC spreadsheet. It's just a matter of time of putting it in.
Oh, yeah.
All right, are you all set with that now, Kathy?
Yes.
The GIC health insurance rates, by the way, just came out last week. So we can't even do this until they publish the rates. And they just came out with them, and now we're just getting those to the employees. And the employees, between April 6th and May 3rd, I think it is, are in what's called the open enrollment period, where they get to choose what plan they're taking for July 1. So we're just going through that process now.
Okay,
All right.
but the amount that we put in for the budget has to be posted by Friday, so is that number going to be okay?
I don't know is the short answer, because I got to do some very back-of-the-envelope calculations tomorrow to see if gross order of magnitude this is okay. I know that the current year's budget is going to be short. So does that
Right.
tell me next year's budget's going to be short? Off the top of my head, I don't like doing budgets that way. I like to really put them on a spreadsheet and list them, and then say, okay, so I'm taking the GIC bill, putting it up as a spreadsheet, putting in the new plans, and then seeing what it totals, multiplying by 12, the normal thing.
Okay, but we're gonna post a warrant on Friday, so I guess what I'm wondering is.
So it
we
may
had-
get posted with the number that's in it right now.
We had 510, that's short, so 520 at least, and we have 535.5.
Well,
How much are the rates
I
going
wouldn't
up?
worry too much about that. I'm assuming the norm is, last year you had town meeting in June, so everything was probably well set by then. This year we're going a bit earlier.
A little earlier.
So we'll know these last 2 or 3 numbers well before town meeting, but you may well have to make an amendment on town meeting floor to the number published in the warrant. That's fairly
Just so long
normal.
as it's within a reasonable amount of what we post, then we're good.
I don't think you're off by a lot with the
Okay.
number in here,
Then that's-
because I put in I think a 7% increase. The GIC's increase ranged, remember, they got 16 plans, and it ranged from 4% to 11, with an average 7% increase. If more of our employees were on the high end and took those 11% increase plans, then the 7% increase I built in won't be adequate. If more of our employees are down at the 4 or 5% increase, then we may already have more in the budget than we need.
Well, you said 7%, right? So if I take what we have this year is this year's 510,000, is that the allocation?
Yeah, I wish it was that easy, but it isn't, because it's not a
I know,
matter of the average increase. It's a matter of which employees are in which plans.
Okay, but you said you increased it by 7%, but I'm not seeing that because,
Well, maybe it was 5, I'm,
okay, because if you add the 9,000 on and say 520 times 7%, we're more at 556.
I remember when I was writing this budget
I just
back
wanna make sure
when,
we're-
I didn't have those numbers from Maya yet,
Okay.
or from the GIC yet.
We all set with that list now? Can we move on?
I think that's the last item on the list, is it? We did try.
It is if it isn't. All right.
Okay.
So let's go over to votes of the board, I guess.
I did a 5% increase.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we talked about the budget. Did we?
Yeah, I don't have any further budget action that you necessarily need to take unless something changes on those last couple moving numbers.
I think we talked about that. Are you okay with the budget now, as it is, kind of?
I understand,
You understand it now? Okay.
and I believe now we agree on the numbers, which
Okay.
is a good starting place.
Yeah, I think it was just those non-appropriated expenditures
Absolutely.
that weren't in, yeah.
Okay.
And that's a big number, it's $250,000.
I have it in here now.
Ruth, do you have any other comments on the budget? No? Thank you. Ed?
No, all set.
Kathy, any other comments on the budget?
Well, yes, just that our accountant's salary, it just sticks out like a sore thumb, because a resident who was concerned sent me a benchmarks 42 town survey, and, you know, it kind of is not coming out with that kind of a salary. And then I think about us hiring the new full-time treasurer at about 75,000, and this said that $73,274 is the average salary of 42 Massachusetts communities. And she attached the salary for me to see it, you know, so that I know that it came from a database that makes sense. I did a little look-see in the Mass Municipal website, and I too found that I think we're setting that at rather high, and I think that it's going to be tough to keep increasing that high a salary. Do you know what I mean? Compared to the other salaries we have in town, and I think that a new town administrator can certainly do a benchmark survey off the Mass Municipal site. But I feel that once what the Finance Board is recommending right now makes the most sense. I do think that additional hours are probably a good idea, and I'm in favor of increasing to that level from the 65, and I don't have your number in front of me, Ruth. What did the Finance Board vote?
75.
75,000 even?
The only difference between the finance board and your budget is the town accountant's salary.
Okay, so they voted 75,000 even?
I
Okay,
don't
that's
know.
what I'm trying.
No, ours was around the 83.
83, 382.
Are you,
That's the
Kathy,
finance
you're
board?
asking about the treasurer's salary, right?
No, the accountant's salary.
Oh,
Okay, so
sorry.
I'm just double checking where,
Yes, that's the difference between Finance Board recommends and Board of Selectmen recommends. It's a 55,
Okay.
68 difference,
Well,
and that's on
right,
that one
and-
line item.
we typically only publish the Finance Board recommendation, but I would like to support our Finance Board. So is that number 83,382 your number? So I would need somebody on the prevailing side to be willing to reconsider the recommendation. And 83,382 is 37.5 hours with a 2% raise. And that's above the average of 42 communities, so that's a decent salary. You know, it puts us in a good position. I think the 88,950, close to 90 grand, is at the upper end of our relative salaries in the finance department.
So,
So you could make a motion for the 83, 382 that the finance board came up with. And then we'd all be in lockstep on everything in the omnibus.
so the difference between the board and the finance is about
Mhm.
$5,000.
55.
Yeah. Yes.
Plus the change you made in the trash contract tonight, which the Fin board would have to do Wednesday night to concur.
Yeah. We love
I
our-
have that on the list.
And
And we have, our secretary Melissa is on our call watching.
Oh, nice.
all right, so what was the?
It's right on this sheet that he gave us, 83.
I know, but I'm trying to figure out what we need to do in order to have the conversation.
You have to ask for a reconsider because you were on the prevailing side.
That's all I have to do is ask for a reconsider.
Are you under
Right.
Robert's Rules of Order, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, he was on the prevailing side, so he asked for a reconsider, we vote to
So
reconsider.
somebody who
then-
voted in favor
Yes,
of the 88 would have to make a motion to change it in order to have it on the floor for discussion.
yeah.
All right, so I'll make a motion that we have a discussion on the 88,950 that was voted on at the previous meeting.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further, well, all those in favor of continuing the conversation? All opposed? Okay.
Okay.
So let's continue the conversation. So we're at a difference of 5,500 or so.
Mm-hmm.
And what are you saying?
Well, Ruth could probably present it best. They-
Right, but we had information that was presented at the last meeting that you're saying is not
I
actually
think that's
accurate?
at the high end. I think it's at the way high end, yeah, because I mean, what I looked at in my benchmark, we're a little low at the 66, but when you bump up the hours, you know, some people, the treasurer works 40 hours, we're up to like 37.5, and you put in the 2% increase at 83,382. I think based on what I saw in the Mass Municipal Database, we're in good standing with those other salaries of the towns around us. And also, based on, I'm just looking for it again, this benchmark of 42 communities, we're a little above that, 73,000. You know, so we're looking good. It's an attractive salary. It reflects the fact that our accountant has been here 5+ years, you know, she's.
Remind me what happens when we have different opinions between the finance board and the board of selectmen.
Okay, so at the town meeting, the moderator is going to just ask the town meeting to either hold or not hold on the bottom of each department
Right.
line. So he uses the finance committee recommendations go to the floor unless somebody calls a hold. They call a hold, and then he goes through the whole thing, and wherever the holds were called, we go back, and then those are brought up for discussion within the town meeting. And then the finance board can explain what their recommendation comes from. If the board of selectmen needs to weigh in, we can weigh in as well.
So ultimately, it doesn't matter all that much what we vote on in this meeting, other than being in lockstep with the finance
Well,
committee.
yes, I mean, I think they did some good work, and I think based on the concerned citizen that sent me that benchmark of 42 communities, I think the 88 is based on a very small, high-end amount of communities, and 83 is above the benchmark of 42 communities. So that's pretty good. I think that's good, and I think it's fair because I think our accountant's been here for a while. She's proven herself. She does a fantastic job. There's no reason to pay her below the benchmark. So 83 is above the benchmark, which was 73,000. That's all. And the 83 is supported by the fact that you're multiplying the hours up, you're giving the 2% increase.
I get that.
So, you know, it's fair.
But it's almost to the point where you have that conversation at town meeting, right? As to why the board of selectmen is voted to recommend one
Well, if
thing and
you
why the
still-
finance
Yeah.
committee voted to
I mean,
recommend something
if you still
else.
feel that a couple of towns at the high end are good enough to make the salary, then you could stay with it. But I think we should be based on some mathematics here,
Well,
you know, that makes sense.
hold on a second. So I would
Yeah.
say a couple of things, right?
Go ahead.
So we based the vote on information we had at the time. Maybe
Yes.
that wasn't 100% accurate, whatever the opinion is on that. But that number is already in the budget, and we've already sort of had a surplus somewhere along the line. Surplus was gone. You said we never had a surplus. Kevin said we had a surplus. I thought we had a surplus, but we didn't have a surplus. You get the roundabout that I'm talking
I know
about.
the surplus argument.
So it's already in there and it's already been voted on and it's already been calculated in, so I don't know what $5,000 is gonna do, but Kevin?
I was just gonna, off the board of cautionary note, the salary survey that the town accountant and I collaborated on is in your budget book. You've
Yep,
been given
I saw
those
that.
numbers, you could look at them, they're tangible, you can see how they were derived, you can do your own computations and verify that what
Yep.
we did is accurate. Honestly, Kathy, I don't know what you're quoting from, and I don't know what 32 communities, and we
42.
don't, but I know you're gonna tell me. Here's the problem.
Of course
I don't have it in front of me. So I can't compare apples and oranges because if I had a survey and it
Well, let's-
said something, and it rendered a different conclusion than this one
Yes.
did, I would be all about looking at it and
So-
learning something from it.
Right.
But we don't have it, and you're quoting from numbers we don't have in front of
Okay,
us
but
and
again,
coming
I
to a
didn't have
completely
those
different
numbers.
conclusion.
I didn't have
If I-
his numbers
If I could
either.
finish, please.
Yep.
You're quoting from numbers we don't have in front of us and reaching a very different conclusion than what this is. This survey is tangible. You can call these town halls and check any of these numbers you want. If the board wants to use a different survey, the only thing I would respectfully request is that whoever it is, Kathy or someone else, gives us the survey so we can look at it
Okay,
and see,
This is
if I could
important.
please finish. So that we
misrepresented.
can see the survey and understand what it says, because this, I think, is a very comparable survey. It's the communities in this region, and if we were recruiting a town accountant, this is probably where we'd recruit from. The other survey, I don't know what the survey area is, I don't know what the market data is, I don't know where it's from, so we'd want to see it. And I'm not saying it's wrong, Kathy, I'm just saying we'd want to see it.
Okay.
Listening, if I were here trying to convince you folks, based on rattling off a bunch of numbers with papers that aren't in front of you, I'm going to guess you would not agree with me. You'd want to see the numbers in front of you.
Okay.
That's all I'm asking
That's
for.
not what
Go
I'm
ahead,
saying.
Kathy.
My calculation, or whatever you want to call it, is based on the finance board's calculation. It's not a survey. It's not based on what West Newbury pays. We have never paid the kind of salaries West Newbury paid. And we have kept accountants for 30-plus years. We have employees that have stayed with us for decades, when other towns around us might have paid them more, because they like it here. We like them. It's a great little town. I mean, we can't compete with a town next door that has an equalized valuation so much higher than ours per person. And you know what that means. We just don't have that kind of money. So my biggest concern is that we try to base this new department that we're evolving into on some real math and not give over to a surveyor that over the fence, they can pay somebody $5,000 or $10,000 more and take them away. If that's what it's gonna take for someone to leave here, my opinion, they're gonna leave. Because we can't play this bidding war. But when I see that someone in town sent me a survey from a database that shows that out of 42 communities, which is all ends of the spectrum, the 73 is in the middle, and obviously some of it, we would never want to pay those salaries. But then I see that we're going above that, and it's based on real math from the finance board. I trust them. I know. I used to be a finance board member. They spend so many more hours than I'm able to on these numbers, because I have so many other things as a selectman that I have to look at. But I put a lot of confidence and faith in their efforts. And when I hear that their committee met Wednesday night and they discussed this and they came out with this number, all of them, three of them were also accountants at that table? 3 accountants sitting at the table came up with this number and they agreed it was a unanimous vote. That's a great vote. And I agree with you, Mike, to some degree. I don't need to keep talking about this. If you don't want to change the vote, it's okay. I just wanted to bring it up to point that I think the finance board did a very,
I
very good
think
job
it's
with it.
it's already been voted on and it's already in the budget, but if you want to have that discussion at town meeting, you can certainly put a hold on that.
Okay.
Right?
Well,
And then bring it up
Well, this will be the number that goes to the floor,
Right.
83,000.
I know.
So that's the number I agree with. I won't put a hold on that.
Okay.
That's fine by me. Okay.
So-
Then I'm good.
You're
I'm
good.
good. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Let's move to annual town warrant.
So you've got about 12, 13 articles that you haven't taken positions on yet. I think most of them are going to be pretty straightforward. There's a couple that with a wrinkle. but most of them I think are gonna be pretty easy, but we need to run through them, and so you can take a position. And I've got them all pulled out, so I can tell you exactly which ones. Number 3 is, if you're looking at draft number 2, the one I sent you over the weekend, the first would be Article 3, authorize supplemental appropriations. Right now, that shows 50,000 being transferred, I'm sorry, 60,000 being transferred for the fire department budget. I don't think we're gonna need to do that. I think we're finding, now the big question, which we don't have an answer to right now, 4431A says the Board of Selectmen, with a concurring vote of the Finance Board,
Correct.
can transfer from surplus budgetary appropriations into overrun,
Yes.
except for schools and one other one that I'm forgetting, but it
Oh,
doesn't matter.
schools, bingo.
So here's the thing. We're carrying very large surpluses in 2 of the school budgets, Essex and Whittier. That's available to move into the fire department budget to bring it back and and whatever other budgets we need it for. However, we're gonna get a ruling tomorrow from the Department of Revenue. Does the clear wording of 4433A mean we can't use those surpluses by virtue of your votes? In which case, town meeting can do it. And town meeting would do it under this article, but I have to reword it.
You'd have to put on a special town meeting.
No, you don't have to do a special.
Because it won't be available till July 1st then.
I've had lengthy discussions with the Department of Revenue. I've done this for 42 years, just this way, so early.
Never
Sean
done
Cronin
special.
both said it's fine. Look, hey, if you want me to do a special town meeting warrant, I'd be happy to write one for you. But I'm telling you, this is proper. It's blessed by them. I've got it in writing, straight from Sue Worley, Department of Revenue Field, Bureau of Accounts Field Rep. So, but the article would have to get rewritten in order to allow you to use a school department appropriation, which is surplus, to move into a non-school budget. Tomorrow I will know the answer to that question, and as soon as I know the answer to that question, either Article 3 won't need to be acted upon, or we'll leave it in here just as a precaution, but the number will be taken out, so it'll be generic. It'll just say supplemental appropriations. It won't be specific at all. Because remember, the law says, it's actually the Boxford case, right up the street, if you publish a number and a budget in a warrant, in an article, you can't deviate from that in the motion. But if you publish a very general article, you can tailor it with the motion at town meeting. In other words, this warrant is the warning to the voters. So if you say a certain thing in here, you can do less, but you can't do more. So I'll just change this to make it generic in case we need it. And I'll shoot you an email and tell you which way it turns out. So all I can tell you tonight is I would recommend favorable recommendation based upon what DOR gives us as a ruling. If you're not comfortable with doing that, because we don't know right now what they're going to say, then I will not publish a favorable recommendation in here. I'll leave it blank,
Yeah.
and then you can make that recommendation on the floor of town meeting based on what DOR tells us. Up to
How
you.
much do you think, I mean, 60,000 is probably excessive, right? How much do you think they're really gonna need to make it to the end of the year?
All we did to calculate that is we took the current monthly run rate and we multiplied it times the rest of the year. So, will that actually be what happens? Who knows? We don't
Hopefully
know.
not. I'm just looking through on some of the other lines that we might have some money kicking around at the end and, you know, so we might be able to get it from some of these other lines too.
Well, I'll have a complete plan prepared for you by your next meeting that addresses
okay.
that question.
Yeah,
Tonight, it's just a matter of, do you want to take a position and say favorable action without knowing the final action on this
I do
thing?
not.
Or do you
I
want to
do
keep
not.
it? Okay,
No,
then,
I'd like to
my
take it
recommendation is
off.
take no position.
Okay.
Finance Board, I'll recommend the same thing Wednesday night. We'll leave it blank,
okay.
and then between now and town meeting, this will settle, and then you can
It's
take a
something-
position. It just won't be in the warrant, that's all. Okay?
Andy,
Yeah, go ahead.
a quick point of information on that.
Yeah.
So when I saw this in the draft, it surprised me because I haven't seen a variance report, but what I've been, so the information that I've had, that I've been using is the budget that we've been working for, next year's budget. And in next year's budget, the fire department only asked for another $10,000. We voted for an extra $7,000. So from $360,000 to $367,000. That's what we've discussed, that's what they've asked for, and that's what we voted for. So to see potentially that they're short $60,000 was surprising to me.
Yeah.
And I just think it's something that I want to point out, and I want us to all keep an eye on as the next year progresses, because they're not asking for the money. They seem to think they aren't going to need it, yet they're short now and projected to be more short by the end of this fiscal year. So it's a concern of
Yeah.
mine that I wanted to just point out.
It's a very good point. And I had the conversation with the same thing with the chief. I said, Chief, you know, we're running way over this year, but you didn't request it for next year. And I did put a little increase in, but nothing near this. What he's seeing is he's looking back 3-4 years at the statistics of calls, and he's seeing a dramatic increase this year, which we can't attribute it to anything but COVID, because everybody's home.
Yeah.
And so he's got a ton of kitchen fires. I know it sounds funny, and I apologize, it's not funny, but on the other hand, it's because we're all home cooking. So they actually have a code for stove fire, and he's got a bunch of them that happen. They got to respond, and when they hit that alarm, they don't know whether 2 call people are coming back or 15 are coming back. And since we're a call department, the good thing about a call department is it's very economical compared to career, full-time
Well,
firefighters.
hold on, we're not a 100% call anymore. We
No,
have 2
but we've got
full-time.
3 career people now.
Right.
The bad part about a call department is you can't regulate the response very well because you got to pay the people who turn out or they won't turn out. Combine that with the fact that we're just having an enormous rise in calls due to that kind of thing, and you get what's going on. Now, what he's betting is that come July, and maybe not July, but as we get into the latter part of the summer, things are going to go back to normal. There's going to be a lot fewer people home, which is going to generate a lot less of these kinds of calls, and you're going to see that go down. Now, you know, it's an educated guess,
Well,
but that's his guess.
So I said we should keep an
So
eye
it's a
on it.
very good point, and you're absolutely
Eye on it.
right.
And
You're
if it
gonna have to
continues,
track it.
we both find a way to have a dialogue about
Yes.
looking at last year's trends, who responded, how many, and finding a way
Yep.
to.
Well, actually, more like 2019 trends,
Right.
because that would be different
No,
than
if
20.
it continues
Right.
out
But-
of budget, then we'll look at this year's trends and find out really who's responding, how many do we really need.
Right, but if you're
Yes.
betting that things are going to ease back at the end of summer, you're going to look at 2019 version, because that would be a more accurate representation of what the
That's
normal
we've done
is,
for
right?
this budget.
Yeah.
Right, and he said there was 2 things. He had 10% more calls, which wouldn't be $60,000, but more call firefighters sitting at home,
Right.
able to respond to calls. So there's also the idea, the thought to float there. He may already be doing this, but and in the past, when the call department tried to manage things a little bit, they would just tone one side of town on medicals, never on fire. Fire was always empty the house out, everybody brings everything. But on medical calls, we can manage that, especially with full-time staff. You know where they are.
I just want to point out the
So, I
shortage
mean,
versus the budget.
It's COVID, it's a budget.
What's
thing.
Next one is Article 23 on page 24. There's going to be a series of about 10 of them here, 10, 11. So Article 23 is a routine article to set the spending limits on the revolving accounts you have. Be aware that you've got one new one down there, Groveland Day, which 30,000 is what you said last year.
Yeah, that's our new one.
So these are the same limits as you used last year,
So,
with the possible exception of VC, which Mike requested 150, and I don't know if that's the same that we used last year, but these are all basically what you did, except with the exception of that one. That may be the same, I'm not sure.
do we want a motion on this?
Yeah, you need to make a motion
So I'll
on each
make a
one of these
motion for
to take a
favorable
position.
action on Article 23 as it appears in the warrant.
Second.
Motion in a second. Any further discussion? Ed?
No.
Jason?
No.
Bill?
No.
Kathy?
No?
I'm gonna scan through these again.
And the reference to 2021 is correct there,
Yep.
because it was established then and it's
Yes.
going forward.
Pines Maintenance has a revolving fund, Bill?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
What do you think we're trying to sell field spot? It's gonna go
Okay,
right
okay,
in there,
okay,
baby.
okay.
No, that's a mistake, thank you.
What?
22 is correct, thank you.
Well, established in the bylaws for, I think that we established,
No, it's not, it doesn't refer to the year in which they were established. It refers, it's funny wording.
it's just a.
For the year
But
that
it
it's
should
going to
be
be
22.
enacted.
So
Yes.
22.
Because Groveland Day was 2 years
Yeah.
before that.
So 2022 goes in there. Okay.
Bagnell was 5 years.
Amendment accepted.
All right.
Um,
All in favor of Article 23?
Aye.
24 is a routine article. You established a PEG access fund last year at town meeting. And this is the article that, last year you voted to establish it. This is the article that allows you to continue it this year.
Okay.
And I set it at 150 because that's what you did last year.
So move favorable action.
Second.
Any further discussion on Article 24? Jason?
No.
Kathy?
No.
Bill?
No.
Ed?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Article 25 is the water budget that you've all seen in the budget book, but the law changed, I think, 4 years ago, and you now have to vote enterprise fund budgets as a separate warrant article in the warrant. I think you did that last year, and you've been doing it, but the law is you got to vote them separate. You can't put them in the omnibus.
Right, we know.
So I move favorable action on Article 25 and 26.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Jason?
No.
Kathy?
I'm just checking the one. No, I don't see anything.
Bill?
in this.
No.
Ed?
No.
All in favor? What? Go ahead, no, go
Point
ahead.
of information, that also says fiscal year, to be offset by fiscal year 21 revenue,
22.
26.
Thank
does.
you,
and that's in 25 and 20.
22.
thank you.
So amendment
It is a
accepted.
copy of mine, I will say, I love it.
Good at it.
You tell me when, I'll give it a final.
All in favor of fiscal year 2022 amendment and Article 25 and 26?
Aye.
27 starts with 4 or 5 new articles that have been talked about, that I put in here for your consideration. And then we go back to another 4 or 5 and be done, routine articles. So 27, you've been chatting about setting up a stabilization fund for the purpose of forward funding for the firefighter salaries against the day 3 years from now, 4 years, fiscal years, when the grant will be done and you'll have to pay for those. So I thought, this is the article that'll allow you to do it. I thought 50,000 was an appropriate number. Now, as we sit here, I don't know yet where the 50,000 is coming from.
That's what I was going to ask you. Okay, so then.
At 5:30 tonight, I knew where it was coming from, but now I don't. So,
Well, this is just to set up the reserve account, not to fund it necessarily.
and that could be the case, Bill, or it could be the case that when we get this all mixed and matched and done, maybe you can do 20,000. But the notion of setting it up and getting it funded and letting the voters know this is coming is, I think, a good idea.
I think so too, and setting aside planning for that expense down the road
Right.
is also a good idea. So I move favorable action on Article 27.
But are you going to leave the money in, or are you just going to set it up?
You get a seconded first, Kathy.
Oh,
I'm-
second, sorry.
I'm going to take the money out,
Okay.
okay? Just so that you know, when I edit this tomorrow, I'm gonna take the 50,000 out because, again, remember, if you publish a number in a warrant, you can do that number or less, you can't do more. So the general rule of thumb is, other than the omnibus article, don't put numbers in the warrant. Just don't do it, because
Okay, so
too many things are gonna change between now and May
You
24th.
can put in more, but not less.
Exactly. But if you publish a number, the Boxford case says you can't go higher. So if for some crazy reason we needed to,
I think we've gone
we wouldn't be
higher.
able to. So the general rule of thumb is don't put numbers in. I put them in this draft so that when you were looking at it, I could give you my best guesstimate of what would make sense.
Mr. Chair?
But
I withdraw
I'm
my
gonna take
motion
those out.
And then reword it to read to just establish a new stabilization fund to fund it with no amounts.
For Article 27,
To
Right.
put it beginning in FY, and so it would end with beginning in FY,
22?
Basically, everything up until,
oh, the end further, just take out and further.
I'll take care of it, don't worry. It'll just say, raise and appropriate or appropriate by transfer from available revenue, a sum of money.
I thought we were taking the money
And then
out.
the sum gets set under the motion.
Yes. The sum will be nothing.
Oh, the sum will be nothing. Well, why put
Instead
the
of
sum?
$50,000, the word money will be in there.
Exactly.
So
but,
then it can be.
but we'll establish that
So
stabilization
we're
fund.
establishing the fund.
Right.
So on all these
But we're
next
not
few
funding.
articles, to the
Correct.
extent you decide to include any or none,
Mhm.
the numbers will be stricken from all of them, and it'll just say a
Okay.
sum of money, okay?
Okay. Are we
Any
ready?
further discussion? Jason?
No,
Ed?
No,
Bill?
No?
Kathy?
No,
All in favor, Article 27 with no sum of money written in it?
yeah.
The next one, Article 28, is a recommendation that came from Building Inspector and Town Planner, and I certainly concur with them. Last year, they codified the zoning bylaw, and I think the zoning regulations, the planning board regulations, conservation regulations, and they got a proposal to codify the general bylaws. Codifying the general bylaws means basically putting them into a document so somebody knows exactly what they say, what year they passed, if they get amended, how did they get amended, what year did they get amended. Frankly, it's awfully important to do it, because right now, we've got a general bylaw book, and no one's actually sure. We got two different copies, and nobody's sure which one is right. Now, these are the laws of the town, so we can't not be sure which is right. And the only way anybody could know is if they go back and they research all the town meeting warrants back into the 1800s to check it.
So who is submitting
So when they
this?
codify it, what they do is they basically, the town clerk gives them a copy and says, to the best of my knowledge, this is accurate. They then codified it, meaning they put it into the same book that the ZBL's in and all that. And it's a code book, it's a loose leaf binder, it's got the town seal. The cost to do it is just a little under 4,000,
5,000?
but there's just a little under, but there's a $900 maintenance fee, and nobody budgeted it for this year because it just sort of got forgot. So I put the $900 maintenance fee and a $3,900 fee to codify the general bylaws, and that adds up to the 4,990 number. But again, if you approve putting this in, we'll take the number out, it'll just say a sum of money. But in this case, the number probably will end up being 4,990.
So this is not submitted by the town clerk, though? I would've thought
I
the
don't,
town
you know,
clerk-
honestly, I didn't talk to Beth, so I don't know if she even knows about it. It came to me from Rebecca.
Oh, from
And it was in a
Rebecca.
proposal from General Code Publishers who did the zoning bylaw and the other parts of that.
So we have a quote for this 4,990.
And you know as much as I know, because that is all I know about it. And I was asked to put it in, I said, sure, I'll put it in. Up to you if you want to keep it in.
'Cause I guess I'd like to have Rebecca, like, confirm that there's a quote on this. And does she want this article? Or
Well,
wouldn't it
she
say
wouldn't have
by-
submitted it if she didn't need it.
But it says submitted by the finance director.
She said she covers the
You
maintenance.
can put on whoever you want.
Okay.
No pride of authorship here.
So she wants us. You got a quote
She
that matches
says, I
this.
cover the maintenance fee, I submitted it.
Okay. All right, so we don't need to say sum of money. This is the money right here.
It is, but just as a generic rule, I recommend don't put any numbers in because it gives you complete flexibility later. I've seen things get messed up more than once because it was, oh, this is cast in iron, this isn't gonna change, and then it changes because something happens.
I've
So,
heard just the opposite.
I just say to you, don't
have-
take the risk.
No, you have to warn the people about
If
how much
if you wanna
money-
put it in, fine with me, because it's an
Yeah,
actual
I-
written quote. So,
Okay, so I'll
Yeah, I
move,
think you can do just as is.
move favorable on Article 28.
Or would Would
Hold
you
on.
wanna say up to, so if it's not that exact amount?
Okay.
That actually is the exact amount,
have
as it stands
that
right
sort
now.
of Flexibility, or up to,
Well, we're gonna tie this up. We're gonna tie up this sum of money, raise and appropriate. It's tied up. It's encumbered, put it that way.
We have a motion, is
I'll
there a second?
Second her motion.
Second. So, you said this is exact, right? This is
It
the
is.
maintenance and the actual performance of it. All right, so, 4,990. Any further discussion? Jason?
No.
Kathy?
No,
Bill?
Nope.
Ed?
No,
All in favor of Article 28?
yeah.
Article 29 is to pay a consultant to write a wage and classification plan for you. Now, this is kind of ironic because we've been spending an enormous amount of time throughout this budget season talking about proposals for wage increases for a whole variety of employees. The only proper way to do wage setting for employees is a pay and classification plan. In fact, your bylaw requires you to have one. Ironically, the HR bylaw requires us to have a pay and classification plan. Pay and classification plan basically does a survey of all of the communities. It develops a job description. Then it takes the job descriptions for each position, assesses them according to a point factor system, comes up with point factor totals that compare jobs to one another. So for instance, the police chief will come out very high on points and establishes grades, usually 1 through 15, something like that, and then X number of steps for each grade. And then every employee gets plugged in where they're supposed to be. Now, I know people kind of assume that a pay plan ends up paying everybody wages. It does not. Everybody who is currently paid somewhere on their proper grade and on that range, 1 through 10, just gets plugged into it. People who are paid so well that they are beyond step 10 get frozen, and they have to wait till X number of years till COLAs catch up to where they are theoretically overpaid. People who are underpaid, i.e. their current wage falls below step 1, get put on step 1. The notion here is to pay all your people according to a well-balanced system. That's the whole point of this. We got a discounted price, so ordinarily we've got somewhere around 30 job descriptions that have to get done, and the consultants price these according to the number of job descriptions that have to get written, because that's where the work is. They do salary surveys, they write the job descriptions, they have to create the matrix. I gave you a copy of the proposal. It's somewhere in all your paper tonight from the consultant who is doing it for Merrimack right now.
oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Sandy Stapchinsky works out of her home office in North Andover, or Andover rather. She has written 5 pay plans in other communities for me. She's excellent. She's doing the one in Merrimack right now. And this price of $9,800 is pretty discounted because she's got the collective wage, she's got the current comparative wage data for all the area communities because she had to do it for Merrimack. So we get a deal because she's already collected most of the pay data. Now, a year from now, that pay data will be no good and it'll have to be redone and this price goes up. My thought was simply this: your new town administrator, when he or she gets here, is going to want to try to set up a pay plan that makes some semblance of sense, because as we all know this year, we've seen a whole variety of things happen that are not coordinated in any proper way. We had that conversation earlier tonight. You know, we got one pay salary survey, we got another salary survey, we got employees that are doing their own salary surveys and asking you for raises. We got boards and committees that are setting their own wages. Board of Health set their own wage this year for the health agent. There was no rhyme or reason for that I could say. I don't disagree with them, by the way, because
I thought it was necessity. I thought there was a long-time vacancy and there was a necessity.
there was, but there was no salary survey to support the wage. There was just, will you work for this? Yes, I will. Great. Boom, done.
Well,
Similarly, the conservation agent, you know, we set a wage for that. There was no salary survey to determine that. My point is, we can't set wages on the basis of ad hoc actions, like this employee petitions, we like this person, We think they're valuable, okay, you get a raise. This person over here, maybe not so much, or maybe we think circumstances aren't right. No, you don't. That's not the way you do wages. The way you do wages is a system, and this will give you a system.
But you insisted that we do that.
What's that?
You insisted that we do that.
I'm gonna leave that alone, and I'm just gonna say that the right way to do it going forward is to have a pay and classification system done for you by a qualified consultant, which she is. This takes 3 or 4 months, and at the end of 3 or 4 months, you will now have the tool, working with your new town administrator, to set wages according to a proper balanced guideline. This is the way it's done.
So,
Now, if you don't do it, that's up to you. You can wait till a new person gets here, but you'll be 3 or 4 months behind, because the one thing I will tell you for sure, your new town administrator will make the same recommendation I'm making. It's the general state of the art.
so I've never seen anything like this on any town warrant I've been a part of in 6 years.
That's why you don't have a pay system.
Well, that's probably why, but I don't know. Honestly, I don't know that it's been that big of an issue prior to this year. So I would tend to lean towards this being part of the duty and recommendation of the full-time town administrator. But that's my thought. Jason?
I think this will provide the tool that the full-time town administrator will need to make the proper recommendations. I think it's key to establishing what should happen, and I think it's very important. It's something we should support favorably. Absolutely.
Kathy?
I think that you can spend a lot of money on consultants, and I know that the Mass Municipal Database does a lot of benchmark work. I'd prefer to hear from whoever we hire for our full-time town administrator about who do they want to do the study. I think, we're taking control of things before they get here and handing them a study done by somebody that they didn't meet with and consult with. So if we're gonna do something like this, I just wanna do it once and do it right. And I also wanna find out from the new town administrator, is this something we need to do, or is this something that can be done in-house and save the taxpayer 10 grand? Because there's just so many studies you can keep doing. There's just so many things you can look at. You can end up paying a lot of consultant money over time. And, we don't have unlimited funds this year. We've already been there. So I think this would be one we could take off the warrant.
Bill?
I'm with Selectman Castellanos. This just looks to me like something that would be a great, something that the full-time TA should have on their plate. Kind of like hiring a coach before you hire the GM.
Ed?
Now, this is something that comes up in a discussion constantly when we're looking at what we pay town employees. We have this discussion. Every time there's a job posted, are we paying them the right amount of money? This is something that's long overdue. We talk about having a survey done, have somebody tell us, are we paying people the right amount of money compared to other cities and towns, population. Delaying this is only kicking the can down the street and only causing the amount of money that we're going to have to pay to go up. So we continually talk about this, a survey. We've heard it here tonight. And I think it's something that's important. Get it done. Everybody would, on the board here, would like to know, are we paying our employees the right amount of money? Are we paying them too little? Are we paying them too much? This is the way to figure it out, and I think it makes a lot of sense.
Ruth? What do you think?
My feeling is that we owe it to a future full-time town administrator to start to make these choices and these decisions. I'm not saying it's not important. I think it's very important. I understand. I've lived this challenge this year. It's very apparent to me. And we've made adjustments and we've made hard decisions where we can, but I think that a permanent, full-time person who we're really putting in this role has I feel like we owe them that responsibility, and I feel like, as important as it is, there's gonna be a handful of things that you're gonna need to work with. Say we have the study, and you can't implement it all on day one. We need to do the study when we're ready to start making implementations. I know that we start to slowly make implementations when we do something like this, but I still feel like that they should be in the decision.
Okay, so we've had plenty of discussion on Article 29. Motion and a second. All in favor of Article 29? What?
Didn't you make a motion to remove it?
Yeah, we did.
I thought we made a motion to
Everybody made a
remove it.
motion.
No. Well, make a motion to, Jason, make a motion. How's that?
I make a motion to move favorable on Article 29.
Well, wait, we're either putting it on the warrant or not. We're not moving favorable, unfavorable, right? We decide
Yes.
what goes on the warrant.
Well, it's actually a good point,
Yes.
because there's two separate votes, so you can do it with one
Right,
vote.
so
To
my
put it on,
motion-
I mean, you
yeah.
didn't do that with the prior ones, you just
No,
recommended
because
them.
you
So if you
modified-
recommend them, obviously they're on.
Right.
Correct.
If you,
Don't
I
recommend
mean,
it.
you can
to
take two separate votes if you
Well,
want,
no,
sure.
I would make a vote.
Because none of these are on unless you allow them
So
on.
Jason's making a motion to accept Article 29.
I'll second that.
All right. So I think we've had plenty of discussion, which was a little bit backwards, because I thought we already made a motion in a
I
second.
thought we did too.
Well,
Whatever.
everything's merging together.
It's
So,
fine.
all in favor of passing Article 29?
Yep.
All opposed?
I will remove that from the warrant.
Thank you.
Article 31 is looking for an appropriation.
30 or 31?
31, you've already taken a position on 30.
Oh, that's
That's
right.
the COA van.
31.
31 is to appropriate a sum of money, and I've suggested 40,000 to pay the cost of hiring an attorney or attorneys to take, basically to collect that 650,000 in overdue taxes. Now, the methodology to do so is not available without a tax title attorney, because what the tax title attorney does is send a letter to all the delinquent taxpayers and say, basically, the town's going to initiate foreclosure proceedings, pay up. And then typically, unless Groveland's very different, you're going to get a very, very large percentage of these delinquent taxes are going to come in. A small number will still be there, and the tax title attorney will select the ones that are the largest owed and file on those and begin the foreclosure proceeding. And that will cause the taxes to be paid. This is, by the way, universal, completely normal. Every single city and town in the Commonwealth does this. We are the only town I've heard of that does not. So this is not exceptional, folks. This is normal. Now, there's another way you can do this. You cannot put it on the warrant, in which case the treasurer has the legal right to engage a tax title attorney on their own, pay them to collect this bad debt, and then take the cost of the attorney's action off next year's revenue, right off the top. It gets reported on the recap sheet. Don't need permission of the board. In fact, treasurers have the authority to do it. Now, the fees and all that, and the charges, and the sheriff's fees, and the interest, all gets charged to the homeowner, all to the delinquent taxpayer, put it that way. So, frankly, I thought it was better to bring this to you so that you know this is here and give you the opportunity to vote on it and decide, is this something you want to do? I will tell you that this treasurer is not going to do it without your permission. So if you don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it, even though I've got the legal right. Because I think the board should speak, but what do you want done? And so this is the opportunity to tell me what you want to do.
Can we have a motion on Article 31? Please talk about it.
I'll motion to remove it from the warrant.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. So again, I know you say we've been doing things a little bit differently.
Yep.
And I've never seen this on the warrant in the last 6 years. But I understand.
But by the way, Mike, the reason you haven't is because we haven't done this in over 6 years.
Right. Right. So, but Ken, did you say something earlier about
done some fact checking on this. First of all, we have taken property when necessary, and we've utilized a specialist in Copeland and Page. Okay, so that's an available option. The auditors also offer a company that's willing to look through the list of properties and say which ones might be viable to take off our hands and give us our tax money.
That's called bundling.
I know. But then, the one that, fact checking a little further, I talked with John Christopher, who I know is a municipal attorney with some experience about the whole issue of all this, and oh, thank you. How many mics do I need? So, thank you. So I'll speak louder. What came to my awareness is now that we have this new planning department and a town planner who is a specialist in the properties of our town, what better person to take a look at these 25 properties and advise us? I mean, these properties are under our control. They cannot be sold. And as I said before, unfortunately, one of the largest pieces of that 652,000, fully 33% of it, is tied up with the Valley Screw property, which is just a thorn in my side. But the other properties, I think it would be fantastic to have our planning department and our town planner take a look at that, and when we bring in the new town administrator, then can get some recommendations on action that can be taken without having to pay out $40,000, which I don't think we'd have to pay. I don't think it was gonna cost us anything to get some money back on this property.
So you're saying we can take
I say
action, but
yes.
without the payment,
Correct.
or that much of a payment?
Without any I think without payment, because you end up deciding, whether you're gonna forgo the interest owed on the property and take the tax money. Either way, our town planner could give us some very good advice on the parcels that are on this list. Again, like I recognize some of them from older developments. So it's a hot market in Groveland right now, and maybe some of these parcels would be worth something, but there's just as good a chance that these were left behind because they're wetlands and we got stuck. Yep. So I think that's the best first step. I don't think paying anybody or hiring another consultant, and I know, Kevin, you were talking about the firm you're working with and them going out and getting and I just don't want to get involved in any of that right now. I'm very against that. I think that we're in enough of a problem this year financially. We don't need to add more to it.
Jason, hold on. Jason?
Yeah, I agree with some of what Kathy had said, particularly since 33% of that number is Valley Screw. That makes a big difference in the way that I looked at it before. I can understand pushing this off and waiting until the following year. I believe it has to go through an attorney when it does go through, and that is going to have a cost to it. So eventually it's going to be paid, depending on they can take it out there.
They do. So we don't have to.
The same is the same. It's going to get paid.
Right. But we don't have to.
But I can see putting that off for you.
Ed?
Yeah, I think we should support this. Basically what you're telling the townspeople is you don't need to pay your taxes because we're not going to go after their back taxes. That's exactly what you're saying. If you're here to represent the people in Groveland, you want the town to proceed with some of these back taxes, because if you got a next door neighbor that's not paying their taxes, getting the same services, it's time to move with this. And I agree with the like the Valley Screw property, and actually I think there's another one up by the Chinese restaurant up on, I can't think of the name of that side street there.
Oh, yeah. I know where you mean.
There was a problem, but look,
Dana Drive?
what is it?
Is that Dana Drive?
Dana Drive, yes, thank you. But as the finance director has told us, and the former finance director, usually once these letters go out, you start getting money in, and we can use some of that money. So I think that this should be supported.
I think there's two different topics we were talking about there. Bill?
Yeah, I don't agree with that statement at all. I think it's a false statement, and I think a letter 25 letters should not cost anywhere near $40,000. So,
Before we vote, Kevin?
Just want to let the board know that if you have your town planner identify properties that you think are ripe for,
Yeah.
trying to collect the taxes on, the town planner has no authority to engage in foreclosure
understand that.
proceedings. This is a normal thing done in every single city and town in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. You are singular in not doing it. I want to stress that.
We have done this
You-
before,
If I could finish.
but we have done this.
And the reason you have $650,000 in unpaid taxes is because nothing has been happening to collect that money. Now, the only tools you've got, publish the names in the paper, typically that gives you very little compliance. Bundle, there's companies out there that will buy the tax liability. The treasurer can bundle up a bunch of them
Yes,
and
for
sell them
free,
at
you don't
auction.
have to pay.
And sell them at auction, and that'll take care of some of them. But at the end of the day, the only process that the law allows in order to collect these overdue taxes is the foreclosure process, because that's when people will finally pay. Remember, right now, if I wanted to not pay my taxes and put that money in the stock market, I could probably do pretty good. And the interest rate that the town charges is probably less than I could do, so people might do that. One of the very common reasons that property taxes aren't paid is because people take the money that they would have paid and they put it to a different use. Developers do this all the time. The only way you force compliance to get these taxes paid is the tax foreclosure process. That's the only way to do it. I want to say again, so the board understands clearly, failure to engage in this activity means the $650 you've got out there right now in uncollected taxes will remain on your books as a liability against overlay and against free cash. So $650 turns into $1.3 million that could be released to free cash and overlay surplus dollar for dollar, or dollar for $2 when you collect it. So for every dollar that you bring in, $2 gets released and becomes spendable. But if you fail to take any collection action, then you will not release it. It stays out there and people won't pay it. And the proof they won't pay it is that this is the legacy, $650,000, which is pretty close to 10% of your tax levy. I mean, this is a gigantic number, and this is an extremely destabilizing factor in your finances. Having said that, I've given you every bit of information I can professionally give you. Now it's up to you to decide what you want to do, but you've got the picture.
Well, can I just,
Hold on. I don't think we're talking about not doing anything. I think we're talking about transferring the responsibility from a $40,000 lawyer to a different step process using in-house people that we already use and
our town attorney.
our town attorneys or the.
Town attorney will not do it. He will
Bookman
tell
and
you
Page and their
he is
services.
not in the business of filing foreclosure proceedings.
So I
There's
don't think we're
specialty
talking
companies.
about not doing anything and continuing, as you say, to not do anything for 6 years. Again, a third of that, a
231,000.
third of that value is from one property that we're never gonna get anything back.
Yep.
At first, I mean, I worked for years on that, and we're not gonna get anything back from that. So, Bill,
so your 1.2 million is really 800,000, because if you strip out the 231 that you're never gonna get from Valley Screw, and Mike will tell you, he's worked on it endlessly, you're talking 419, not 650. So the number you have in mind is not the real number, because 231 is just uncollectible. It will remain so probably till the day way past we're all dead. So your 1.3 million is actually 800,000. And to Mike's point, I don't think we're neglecting any of this. I don't think we've ignored any of this. But I also don't think it's worth $40,000 at this point in time.
You do get that back. You get that 40 grand back.
Right, but we don't need to put it
It's
out to
not
get it
gone
back.
money.
Yeah, but I
I
don't
don't
think,
think we need to spend
You
it.
have to pay the lawyer, but then he adds it to the collection fee. So you get it back. It's not It's not gone, it's an investment in collection, think of it that way.
I think what we're saying is we're gonna use our in-house people to do
You
that.
can't do this in-house. You
Okay.
don't
For a first
have a
step.
tax
I
title.
guess-
Question.
You don't have a foreclosure attorney. This is not a place for an amateur.
May I just say one thing?
Has to be done by a lawyer.
Right.
Chairman Wood asked you to see this information last time, and you said, no, you're not allowed to see it. You remember that?
I'm sorry?
Chairman Wood asked you for the list last meeting, and you said, no.
So it's from-
No. Mike asked about having the board decide
No,
who got
you asked to
foreclosed
see
on
the
and who
list.
didn't, and I said, you can't do that.
You
That's
asked
what
to
I
see
said
the
no
list.
to.
Well,
I never said you can't see the list. In point of fact, we may put the list in the newspaper. You're very welcome to the list.
right, because we
I don't remember
didn't,
what
anyway, I didn't have the list, I didn't have the audit report, I didn't have the Pentucket assessment letter this year, which I always get. So all of these things I went and got, because I needed to know. And I'm just saying, I think we've come to a pretty rational decision. I think our townspeople trust us. All of this property is not getting away free and clear. This property has tax liens on it, interest accumulating. The owners can't do anything with it. In many cases, it's an unknown owner, so that's gonna be a difficult one. But any property that we can move on and we can do something about, we certainly will. And I think that to suggest that we're the only town that does nothing is just a completely disingenuous statement about our town and about the Board of Selectmen and about the management of our town, going from Denise back to Greg LeBrecq, back to Tom Moses, each and every one of whom contributed to this town, cared about this town, had different management styles, but they helped us. They helped us move forward, and this is not something they would have just left like, I don't want to do this. These liens are there, and the ones that we can work on, we will. But to suggest that we're giving a carte blanche to people to not pay taxes is just disingenuous, very, very disingenuous.
All right,
That's not
so
what's
we have a
happening.
motion to remove Article
Yeah, I got a question, a comment.
Wait.
If, I will. If you keep putting this off, you may run the risk of more taxes and penalties and interest owed than what you're gonna recoup when you turn around and sell the house. So you may, you may not be able to recoup 100% of what people owe. If they owe $100,000 in taxes and you only can get $80,000 for the house, you're out the $20,000.
That's called upside down, and you're already there. We know there's multiple parcels where the value of the parcel is less than the value of the taxes, and that's the result of doing nothing for 5 or 6 or 7 years. That's exactly,
Could also be,
that is what happens, and that's the risk, because when the value of the property, and remember, the foreclosure process takes 3 years. If you started this summer with a tax title lawyer, the first foreclosure decree you'd get from a court would be 2 to 3 years from now. Assuming that the owner of the property is not gonna pay the taxes, you then take the property and you sell it, you give yourself the taxes, and then you put the balance into the free cash. But you redeem the taxes, that's the first thing you do. When you don't do that, and the property value is less than the taxes, then you lose the tax revenue permanently. You cannot collect it. And then you must report that to the Department of Revenue, to the Emergency Finance Board, and you must explain
need a page from the
why
audit report.
you let the taxpayers lose that money. You are already upside down on at least one parcel, which is a parcel I was asked to check, because there was some town-owned parcel that a buyer was interested in buying, and I just happened to say, what's the value to the assessors? They gave it to me. What's the uncollected taxes, if any? The uncollected taxes were in excess of the value of the property. You've already got upside-down property. I don't know how many more you've got. And a representation that you're going to do something to collect this without this component, without this arrow in the quiver, means that by definition, you do not have a realistic program. This is the only tool that brings in a substantial amount of the uncollected taxes. Publication of the names, bundling and selling them does bring in some revenue, and those are good techniques. But the one that really brings the money in is when they get a letter on letterhead saying, if you don't pay your taxes, we are going to foreclose. That's when the money comes in. So,
Did you want to add one more thing? So we can
Yes,
move
I
on?
did. So again, I think that you want to hire the attorney through the consultant, and I say no. And I'll read from our audit report, and our auditors also gave us some recommendations on places we can go to get this work done if needed to be done as well. So real estate and personal property taxes are levied and based on values expressed on January 1st of every year. Assessed values are established by the Board of Assessors for 100% of estimated fair market value. Taxes are due on August 1st, November 1st, February 1st, May 1st, and are subject to penalties and interest if not paid by the respective due date. Real estate and personal property taxes are recorded as receivables in the year of the levy. Real estate liens are processed 4 months after the close of the valuation year on delinquent properties and are recorded as receivables in the year they are processed. Real estate receivables are secured via tax lien process and are considered 100% collectible. Accordingly, an allowance for uncollectibles is not reported. That's a
Alright.
good audit report.
So we have a motion and a second to remove Article 31. All in favor?
All right.
All opposed?
Okay, Article 32 is a $49,000 appropriation from Water Enterprise monies for the purchase of a one-ton dump truck. 33 is the same thing, but for a different dump truck, 21,000. These are all the water sewer articles. I thought you might consider voting them as a block. 34 is 11,600 for their updating their emergency response plan. And I'll speak to 35 separately. But 32, 33, 34 are their capital articles.
This all comes out of the water department.
Yes, all water retained earnings.
Is it just one truck, though? That's usually how they split it between the two departments, right? That's one one-ton truck. One-ton dump truck.
Right.
Yes.
Can't say it. That's the cost of one, right? These two numbers.
So I'll move favorable action on Article 32, 33, and 34.
Okay,
Second that.
good.
Any further discussion? Ed?
No.
Bill?
No.
Kathy?
No.
Jason? All in favor, Article 32, 33, 34?
Yep.
35 is a bonded article. I have the wording, I just got it Friday night, but it hasn't gotten in here yet. It'll be in draft number 3, that'll be going out hopefully in the next day or two. Well, not hopefully, it will be.
Am I missing a page?
And this is for the water main and accompanying infrastructure in Union
Oh.
and Chestnut Street at a cost of $360,000.
That's gonna be from the water and sewer.
Yes. Yeah, well, it's a bond, so the debt service gets folded into their budget. Next, you'll see it. Depending upon when I issue the bond, it'll pop up
So just Union and Chestnut,
next
huh?
year or the year after.
That's some of the oldest water.
Oh, is it, those streets in there? Because they're tiny little roads.
And I think that that will be well accepted by most people.
Well, if I,
Yeah, go ahead.
the finance board interviewed water and sewer
Mm-hmm.
at our meeting this past week, and they discussed this, and part of the timing is because there was a lot of construction around that street this past year, so did they say it was National Grid? There was work being done, I think it was National Grid. And so they're piggybacking on the timing because it's being paved by somebody else. So they're trying to get their work done and
So the pop
save the
code's done,
paving costs.
Yeah, rather than go through a new paper. Sounds right.
Yeah.
I
So that
move,
was-
Motion.
I'll move the board vote favorable action on Article 35.
Second?
Any further discussion, Ed?
No.
Bill?
No.
Kathy?
No.
Jason?
No.
All in favor, Article 35?
Yep.
Aye.
And that is the last one.
Oh, could I go back to one?
Oh,
No.
Well,
Who let her in?
Plane or something?
She isn't even on our board.
No, you're not even on our board.
I'll be available, I'll
What
be
do you
available
want?
even when I'm back. No, I just wanted to point out, we skipped over the
What?
Council on Aging van.
No, we already voted
No,
that.
you already voted that.
Already.
But I just wondered if the article should mention the fact that we're funding the amounts,
What article number?
article number 30.
30.
We're proposing funding the amounts that are not covered by the grant. They have applied for a grant, we don't know if and how much they're going to receive.
Right.
And I just wonder if the town meeting might be more receptive of this, knowing that
It's not
it
the
might
full
not cost
amount.
anything.
Yeah.
But we want to support what's above the grant.
Yeah, I can do that.
Thank
Sure.
you.
Okay.
Yep, I'll add that
So that's an
language
easy
in.
change? Okay,
Thank you.
all right. I'll get out of here before midnight.
There we go.
So the only thing the planning board needs to really vote on is the trash.
Yes. All right, so we have on here again, opening of town hall. Ed, I guess this is your agenda request?
Yes, I asked to put this on. I think that the time has come where, at least start the process. And you look at the town offices here, they all got the plexiglass shields up in front.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, I'm getting numerous calls about it. Town hall's closed. It's very inconvenient for people. And it came to light again with the excise taxes that were due, about a month ago? And some people like to walk into the treasurer's office, get the stamp on their tax bill that it's paid, and they're unable to do that. Again, very, very inconvenient for people. And we need to start to open up. Everybody else is doing the same thing. They're opening up their city and town halls, and I think we need to be doing the same thing. And the last time that this was brought up, one of my colleagues here said that, well, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Well, first of all, it is broken and it needs to be fixed. And we need to get town hall open so that the people can be properly served. That's what the town hall employees are here for. And if you're getting complaints, and I'm sure everybody else has got the same thing, time to open it up. And we need to move forward with that.
So I'll make a counter argument to that our position is not only to serve the town people, which I believe is still being adequately addressed, but it's also to protect the employees that are in this office every day and not subject them to additional circumstances that might affect their health. So I had one person actually stop me on the street not too long ago and ask me about town hall and when we might consider opening it. And I said, probably not until late May, when we have a better understanding of vaccinations, what those numbers look like, and what the infection rate looks like against those vaccinations. And they said, oh, that's fine, I really just wanted to go and hang out. And that's what we're trying to avoid, is people coming in to hang out for no other reason
Oh, no.
than just to hang out.
Yep.
So if you want to make a motion that we entertain opening town hall, feel free. If you get a second, fantastic. If not, then the motion dies.
Well, and just to rebut what you just said, you can go into a grocery store, you can go into supermarkets, there's more people there. Those people are being put in the same situation. They're not as well protected as they are here at the town hall. So, everywhere you go,
But if you went into a grocery store and you just sat down and hung out for a while, they're going to ask you to leave because the impression is you're going in to get what you need and then leaving.
Right.
The impression that was directed to me on the street was I was just looking for a place to hang out.
yeah,
Which
well.
is not what we want to do, is allow people just to come into town hall
Yeah.
to hang out for any number of reasons.
And you've got restaurants starting to open up. You get people that are now vaccinated. It's a lot of people at low risk. So I'd like to make a motion that we look into opening up the town hall.
So we look into it?
Yeah, we need to look
I
into
would
it.
look into it. I would say second to that. I-
Okay.
I would just
We
say-
have a motion and a second to
Yes.
look into.
Well, see,
opening
here's
town-
what I'm
hold on,
thinking.
hold on.
Okay, go ahead.
That we
Never
look
mind.
into opening.
Yeah, we start to
town hall.
plan.
Now, let's have a discussion on what looking into means. Kevin, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just want to let the board know, this subject came up a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
There's some interest, and I promised the board I would check into it. So there's a chat line that the town managers and HR directors, everybody uses, so I started doing that and started asking some questions. Town halls are beginning to open on a limited basis, and here's
Yeah.
what they're doing. Right now, we don't let people in even by appointment. I know there's been some conversation, I mean, basically there's an appointment, but they get met at the door.
Yeah.
Some town halls are beginning to allow people to come into the building escorted, go from the door to the office by appointment only, have the meeting or whatever it is in the appropriate departmental office, and begin, they're doing it right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
everybody is beginning to start to talk about, whether it's with a committee or a discussion group or whatever, what is it gonna look like? Because this summer, and I don't know that it's by May, Mike, but sometime May, June, you're gonna start opening again.
Yeah.
And we're gonna start hearing the governor talking about it, because it's already being talked about. I would encourage the board, however you'd like to do it, to either set up a committee or a conversation with the Board of Health, or whatever it is you think is appropriate, to start talking about that, so that we're not kind of left behind in the dust when other town halls are starting to open. We're still
Yeah.
just beginning to talk about it. I'd like to see us be one of the town halls that, opens with reasonable precautions and safety. And maybe the best way to do that is for the board to set up a committee that can start formulating it. I don't have time to do it, you know
Well,
that.
that was gonna be my next point. is
Right.
Who's gonna be doing the meeting at the door and escorting?
No,
Catherine? It's not gonna be
No,
me. I'll
no,
tell you
no.
that.
No, the individual departments are
Well-
what's doing
Then
it.
you're
So
taking them away
somebody
from their
calls.
office, and then they're
Yeah,
actually
somebody
making
calls
phone calls.
and it's driven by the comfort level of the personnel. So, if the person in a specific office has predisposing conditions,
Right.
they might say, look, I'm not having anybody in my office until I know everybody's vaccinated or whatever. But another person, like me, I'm vaccinated and I'm 4 weeks down the line now. So if somebody wants to come into my office and talk to me, I'm happy to have them. So I think all I'm trying to say to the board is that things are beginning to open, there's beginning to be discussion, and I think it would be a good step for the board to task somebody, and I think best as a group of people, with kind of thinking through, what does this look like? So maybe you get a board member, a Board of Health member, town employee, whatever it is you think, but I think it merits some discussion at some point.
I don't not think it doesn't merit discussion, and as I mentioned in the opening, that I have always said mayor's, right? It will always come down to mayor. So if you want to start talking about what that looks like now, that's fine by me. But as far as actually implementing that plan, I'm still holding to May. Because
Yeah,
that was
I would
the timeframe
strongly
I
encourage the
think.
board, please, don't vote to open the doors tomorrow morning,
No,
because
we're
that
not
would be
ready.
dangerous.
we're not ready.
But if you want to loosen the restrictions a little, you want to permit people to come in by appointment, and the department head so concerned is comfortable with that, or you want to appoint a committee to begin looking at this and kind of designing what will this look like come July or August, I would suggest to you it's a good idea to do.
So I would also look at doing what it looks like across the board, not by individual departments.
Yeah,
Because Then
you're
it
right.
would be, I can do it with this department, but this department I can't do it with. I
Right.
can do it with that department, but I
Right.
can't do it with that department. So
Yeah.
then it's not consistent.
No,
You don't
you're
know.
right. And the library should be on that represented, and the
Well,
Council on Aging,
right,
and
well,
the
the
Public
library's already
Safety
opened
Building,
up
so, yeah,
on their
you're
own
right.
schedule.
Everybody should
Yeah.
have the opportunity. What I have in mind is you should have some kind of a group that works on this and then comes to the board with a suggestion when they feel they're ready, but that, we begin thinking about it. and
I'd be all in
have a
favor of anybody
conversation.
who wants to volunteer to take part in that kind of
I'll
assessment.
help. I could help. I have some ideas.
Any other
arrows.
discussion?
Dots.
Jason?
No,
Jason will be
discussion
on the
on that.
committee.
Jason wants to go home. Phil?
Me
We're
too.
voting the vote is to look into it.
No, we're voting to look into it.
Yeah, I vote to look into it.
Yeah, that's all right. Come on, Jason, help work on it. Be part of the process. We could have arrows.
All right, so we done with discussion?
Yeah, we're
The
done.
motion is,
One quick
hold on a
point,
second, the motion is to vote to look into
Yes.
what it looks, all right, just making sure. Go ahead, Ruth.
even by, maybe once, if there is a little committee that starts, I wonder if the very first place to start is, when I've been working in town hall, even the by appointment meetings are all done in the lobby. To me, it seems like it would be safer to go, the town clerk does a marriage license, she goes into the lobby and meets them. If they were in her office, then she's behind the plexiglass,
That's
they're behind the plexiglass.
Yeah,
I feel like in the
Protocols.
offices, then there's better procedures, safety precautions, than everybody just having non-appointments in the lobby. So that's just something to think
I would agree. I'm thinking more like, we don't have the staff to walk people all over the
Definitely
place.
not.
We don't have that kind of staff. We're not gonna hire someone to do that. So we have to reach a point where we can unlock the door, put enough signage and direction so that people don't all walk in on somebody
To hang out.
or just hang out. We'll have to put down, these are the rules. We'll have to have rules made, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the point of looking at it, you know?
For your business.
Yep, you have to have a package of masks there at the door for people to put on if they come
All right,
on
so
without a
let's-
mask.
Let's move the motion
Yep,
that we look into, whatever that means,
yes.
opening town hall, in
Yes.
whatever capacity that means.
I-
It is hilarious. All in favor?
Yep.
All opposed?
Oh, stop. I mean, come on, Mike.
I oppose it.
I know.
All right. So let's move to, I'm glad Kevin got a chuckle out of
I know.
that. Finance Director time, you don't have anything, do you?
I just have one thing I want to say to the board.
Sure.
You know, we're finally getting to where Thursday, Friday, we're going to post the warrant. Budget's done now. There's still going to be some details trying to figure out how to finance a few things. So the work continues. The process that we go through every year, having been through it, I think 45 times now, can certainly yield a great deal of pressure and tension and stress on all the participants. And sometimes that tension and stress manifests itself in words being exchanged that are not always productive and upon reflection are not always the way you might prefer to have said them. And I myself am occasionally guilty of that. And at the last board meeting, Kathy, you said something that pricked my conscience.
Uh-oh.
You said that I have to respect and be willing to let the board make its decisions and to not be overly passionate about representing things to you that I think are important. It struck a responsive chord in me because I strive to be professional, I strive to be passionate, I strive to do the best job for you I can do because I care. But I crossed the line a couple times at the last meeting. And I apologize for the board for that, because I need to respect your role, and I need to respect the fact that you're going to disagree with me. It's sometimes difficult when I think what I'm advocating to you is the town's best interest. So my apologies for that. It is due to the stress and the work that occurs at this time of year. And so if I have given offense, you have my apologies. If I have given offense to anyone else, Ruth, then you have my apologies as well. I will endeavor to try to be more patient, to be more restrained, and to be more respectful. It is a difficult process, but I wanted to say that. So there, I've said it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
All right, Selectmen time. Jason?
No.
Oh, come on. Kathy? Come on, no.
Yes, I have one thing. No, stop. So I know it happened a while ago, but the death of the police officer in Washington DC just reminded me, you know, that our own police officers have been out there this whole pandemic doing their job. They're amazing. We have an amazing police department, and I can't imagine what the family of that officer in Washington is going through, seeing him killed right before Easter like that. So senseless after he puts himself on the line for people every day. I'm sure the whole police community is shook by that. I know I was. I was shook by that. Yes.
I don't have anything, Bill.
No, we don't have a next high school building committee meeting till tomorrow night, so next meeting I'll have something to report on that.
Ed?
Just to remind everybody that Thursday, April 22nd is Earth Day. It wouldn't hurt, certainly can't get a whole bunch of people together, but if people could pick up some trash around their neighborhood, that would be a big help. The neighborhood, the ballparks, et cetera, and do a good deed. That's it.
Okay. So, nothing under items not reasonably anticipated. Correspondence, resignation from Sergey Branson as the library assistant effective April 8th, 2021. 11 Pond,
Last week.
11 Pond Street Inspectional Services letter dated 3/30/12. Resignation memo from Inspection Services of Jerry Vines, Groveland Plumbing, Gas Inspector, effective 4/6/21. And
Motion to adjourn at 8:55 PM.
so moved.
So moved. So done.
Yes, you need to come up with more stuff to talk about.
You sure?
Hey, what's going on with the dog park?
Move it along.
Is it?
Yep, I met with the architect and Rebecca and everybody.